You guys are listening to the Jordan Garber Now podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. All right, this is it. This is the Jordan Garber Now podcast, and yes, I am your host, none other than Jordan Garber. And I am live today, obviously, in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Very uncertain about the future for myself, not knowing too much about what's going to be happening here for me in the next few months. But honestly, I'm just enjoying it a day at a time. You know, I look out my window right now and, you know, I look at the city of Winnipeg and I look at all the memories that I've actually created here and all the friends I've made, you know, from kindergarten to grade 12. Like, that's a really long time. When you're at school 7 or 8 hours a day through 5 years old to 17, you really you meet a lot of people along the way. You meet a lot, and you create a lot of good connections, and you have those good connections. And there's people that come, and there's people that go, and there's people that I've met throughout those years that I'm still friends with today. And even beyond that, you know, you go to work, and when you live in a city for so long, what I'm trying to say is that the amount of connections you make is immenseless, and people come, people go, and it's kind of good looking back to 5 years ago. I'd say 60% of the people I talked to 5 years ago, I don't talk to now. And what do you think that's like now? You know, the people that we talk to now in 2020, are we going to talk to them in 2025? It makes you wonder too, like what's going to happen in 2025? Look how our world is already, and look what's happening already. So a lot of people ask me, do I believe in aliens? And I'm going to say yes. I believe that there is a greater world out there. And there are many people that think we are living in a literal hell. Now, I might think that at times. I at times might also not think that, because I feel like life is full of good and bad experiences pretty much. And good experiences and bad experiences, both of them, turn you into a stronger individual and a stronger human being in most cases. So I just the thing about me is I feel like I look way too far distant. I can never just look at things day by day on a day by day basis. I got to think about the whole big picture. Now I added all that pressure to myself moving to London, Ontario, and getting all that stuff going now. Who knows if I'll make it there? If I make it there, then that's amazing. You know, it's great to have a new start. But if I don't make it there, then what do I really see myself doing? It would be disappointing, but you know, Winnipeg has a bittersweet city, I feel. It's just so much good has happened to me here. A lot of bad has happened to me here, but that goes for everyone. You know, Rod Smith lives in Buffalo, New York from since he was born to 21. You know, Rod Smith's gonna have all those experiences too. It's hard. It's harder than I expect. Leaving a city after 23, 24 years. So it's gonna be really interesting. Sorry to kind of think. Not where my direction is going to go, but also where this podcast direction is going to go in December. Now, I know the podcast is still going to be here, but what state are we going to be in? You know, everything's based on environment. And if you, surround yourself with good people, then you're already in the mix. You're good to go. But if you surround yourself with bad people, you know, you're just being more heavily influenced by those bad things. So there's many ways you can look at it. But I just feel that, treat each other with respect, treat each other with care, and, you know, I'm sure I don't agree with all the rules the government makes either. This whole coronavirus, I think it's a bunch of bullshit. Now, I might think that, but I'm still following the rules, right? Now, it's important just to follow rules and just follow precautions and just, you know, get through this together day by day. And that's what this podcast kind of outlines a lot, is because every day, you know, I have 2 jobs. I go to work, and if I'm not doing my podcast, there's times I showcase it on Snapchat, or I go on Facebook and I make a comment if I have a bad call, or I feel like social media is so heavily influenced nowadays that there's too many people saying the wrong things. And I feel like I'm one of those guys that at times has pushed the envelope too much. And I apologize once again for that. But I just feel like when it comes down to it, you just got to be on top of things. And social media nowadays, you got to be so careful because I made that mistake. And I feel like I could have gone further ahead if I was more aware of what I posted on social media and things along those lines. But this podcast is basically going to talk about wrestling and life talks. I can grab a sip of water here, sorry. It's pretty much just going to be like about like mostly wrestling, like 60% wrestling. And we're just going to add like 40% of some non-wrestling interesting commentary on there. Now, you guys are listening to the return edition. And as I'm recording this, it's actually September 15th, 2020. And I'm supposed to do an interview with Forrester on Thursday, which is before the show aired today, as of when I'm recording this. So I'm hoping that he is able to come on because I invested so much in this equipment. And I feel like with this equipment, like, you know, the sky's the limit for us. And we can talk to more guys like Forrester and notable comedians, and not just wrestlers, but politicians, you know, athletes, actors. It definitely opens a world of possibility. I was thinking musicians as well. Would love to get some, you know, maybe even some rap artists on here, or even get some like house music artists. I don't know if you guys don't know about that about me, but I listen to a lot of house music, not house music. I listen to a lot of house music, and if anyone knows what that is, it's kind of just like this weird kind of like trance, like disco music. I don't know what it is. It's that word nauseatingly. I can't say it, but it's no nodulistic or whatever the fuck you call it. That's what that music is like to me. So like I listen to a lot of artists like that. So I thought it would be cool to bring guys like that on. I think it would be cool to bring some comedians on and some actors on, like I was saying, because everyone has a different walk of life and everyone tells a different story and a different perspective, and that's just amazing. You know, I might not be the biggest people person, but like when you interact with humans, there are some good ones out there. It's like making a sales call. You know, every single call, are you gonna make the sale? No, of course not. But at least one in those 10 attempts, you're gonna come across a good person. Most of those other people, you might hate them, but you're gonna get that one good person. And I feel like the Jordan Garber Now podcast has a lot of those people that are more of the good person. And I thank everyone for that. You guys are going to be able to, if you guys haven't checked out the demographic update earlier in the show, I'm going to play it again if you guys want, but like we're having listeners from all over the world. And like what's cool about that is, say, if I go to my home page here, I have my listeners. Let's take a look. I have my listeners. So, like, if I'm going on my main page and I have Canada, United States, Ireland, United Kingdom, France, Australia, Singapore, and India, how many different cultures is that? That's 8 different cultures right there. I keep scrolling down the page and there's more and more countries. So, like, how many other cultures are that? It's so cool because everyone's listening to this podcast doing their own culture and practicing their own rituals. And that's amazing. You know, we could have an American family in Texas having barbecue steakhouse or whatever outside with the family, you know, go hunting or like, I don't know, go for a walk with the dog or do what families do in America. Do what families do in Canada and complain. No, I'm just kidding. But like Canadian culture can be explored while listening to the podcast. American culture is being explored while listening to the podcast. And like East Indian culture is being exposed to the podcast. It's amazing, man. Like it really makes me feel happy to have all these listeners from all around the world. There's a lot of people that just have United States, Canada, boom. But it's great to have a multiple database. It just means the world, to be perfectly honest with you. And thank our sponsors as well. You know, without that, there is no Jordan Garber Now podcast. Like they help keep the lights on here. They help keep our sponsors going. Obviously, sponsors actually so somehow, some way, encourage more sponsors, and that just generates revenue. Facebook fan page, you can check it out, the Jordan Garber Now podcast on Facebook if you haven't liked it already. And I'm going to try to get a new Twitter page for us. I'm still on that, actually. But we do have an Instagram, Jordan Garber Now, and Snapchat. Exclusive everyday life of myself and the misery I live in. Check it out on Snapchat, Jordan J. Garber. But, man, what can we talk about? I want to talk about our episodes. I could talk about that, but I do want to talk about right now the Raptors, unfortunately. I watched that Game 7. Oh, that was a nail biter, and it was a heartbreaker too, but I love sports when it ends that way. I'm never a big fan of watching a Major League Baseball game and watching it be 26-9. I like it when it's a 1-run or a 2-run ball game and it's a low scoring game. Just creates more action, more intensity. Now, some low scoring games may be boring, people say. So, if they're having a game where it's 4-5 or 3-4 for 3 or 3.5 hours of play or whatever, that's fine. But I just like close ball games. I feel like that is what creates the storyline in sports. Is that last minute of the game when it's tied. But not the Bombers. Although I do have very high hopes for them when they come back to the CFL. It's unfortunate they didn't have a season going, honestly. I really, really enjoy CFL. I like NFL more, everyone knows that, but I do like the CFL. I've seen the Bombers play. They have a beautiful stadium. If you haven't been to Winnipeg and checked out the Bombers after this pandemic, be sure to check that out. That should be on your to-do list because the Bombers are actually they put on a good show. And we got the Gold Eyes and the Moose and all that here, and that stuff's really good too. Winnipeg is a good sports city, and that's one thing I'm gonna miss. In London, Ontario, what do we have? We have the London Knights. By the way, I have a Ryan Berkey card, and he plays for the Knights, but they're just not the same level of sports. You know what I mean? Winnipeg's really good with that, so. You got to give Winnipeg credit where credit is due. It's not as bad of a city if people think it is. It's not as bad as a city as people think it is. It's just that, it's a high crime rate and it's just a slow paced city. But the sports here are phenomenal, man. I am not going to sit here and say Winnipeg is not a sports city. It's absolutely a sports city. Are you kidding me? Absolutely a sports city. But no, it definitely brings back some good vibes. And you know what? Speaking of good vibes, I was talking about this at the beginning, about good neighborhoods and stuff like that. But whenever I visit West Kildonan, it's like a breath of fresh air because when you go back to the neighborhood you're born and raised in, you have all that N-word it's hard to say, Nas Lataglia or whatever, or all that comes back. There's some depression to it too. You have good memories and some really bad ones, but it just kind of creates this whole area for me has just been innovative. I think I remember I'll tell a few stories. I think this was my friend's birthday. Shout out to Josh here. It's his birthday, and we all hung out. I'm gonna see if I can raise my seat here. Just a sec. There we go. I might have to raise this. Alright. I guess I can't. But anyways. This was on a street called Bannerman. And this was so much fun. We literally, we all chugged a bottle of gin. And it was crazy. Apparently things got rowdy. We climbed the fence. And, as he climbed the fence, the bottle of gin broke. So here we go. We're in someone else's yard because I don't know, we're drunk and fooling around, and we dropped this bottle. We break this bottle of gin in their yard on their concrete. So we run away from that. I still have a 40 of Polar Ice, but we're running down. This was 5 years ago. We're running down a street called Scotia. here we are running with this like 40 of vodka, and it drops on the concrete. Now, anyone's instinct would, obviously you're going to be upset. To the point, I was upset. I was so upset to the point where I literally I shotgunned the whole bottle of vodka. And I got really sick, actually. It was not a good ending for me there, but it was just insane. It was absolutely insane. We'd always go to a place called the Briar, and we'd always get drinks and just walk down Scotia and just talk, man. That's what I feel like this world's lacking. It's just people don't want to talk anymore. People just want to like criticize, which is good. Like, I love constructive criticism. Don't get me wrong. But there's some people that are just like so into technology, and I'm one of them that just warped into that. And I just, like, as a 24-year-old guy that's very talkative and social, like, I prefer that human interaction. And now with COVID, watch technology make extreme advancements to the point where it's unthinkable. That's my prediction, of course. Like, I don't know if anyone knows, but I heard rumors from multiple sources and sites. Obviously, I'm not a journalist on world issues or politics. That Trump is going to take out China. Or somehow, some way, the United States is going to take out China. Now, everyone says, oh, and when I say this, I say the government, not the people. I say China's evil. Extremely evil. That's amazing. If they take out China, then, like, our world's better. No, not really. Because what happens? There's a new world order. And with a new world order, everything's going to be overrun by, like, robots and, like, technology and shit. And it's just going to be insane. So, like, I guess I have to say, just be careful what you wish for, because you never know. But when it comes to that, I don't really know if it's true, but I just want the world to get along. There's a lot of people that are very, very left-wing and very, very right-wing, and I'm not educated enough to, like, really put myself in any category. But, like, the people that are extreme left-wing or extreme right-wing are not living their lives, the way they should, because they're so tied up into this bullshit. Like, I don't know, people are just too into it. It's like when it's like once, like on the weekends, you can go on Twitter and tweet about Trump and talk shit about him and talk shit about Biden and do all that. But, like, what are you really doing with it? You're just saying useless information on the internet that's going to just create a 2-minute reaction. So it's just crazy how coronavirus and all that is just making this world go completely cuckoo. It's unbelievable. You know what else is unbelievable? Let's talk about the 2 jobs that I've been having to deal with lately. I love it, man. I love working. I love making money. But, man, it's been tough at those 2 call centers lately, not going to lie. Like, if you're someone that does sales on the phone, like, my first word of advice to you is have a thick skin. Get ready to get, like, barked at. Because there is no hiding that. Not whatsoever. So, like, when it comes down to it, you need to get yourself a thick skin. And you got to develop a good tone, a good pace, and you got to match how the customer sounds and listen to them, pretty much. And then just take criticism, and you're pretty much on your way. But for me, it's not been so easy lately. I hate how in sales jobs, like, I'm not going to I can't say really much about where I'm working now, but I used to work at a company called Telus Solutions, and it's like, not every day is going to be a big sales day. It's almost like one of my coworkers told me. It's like you go to the casino and you roll the dice. That's what a call is. You're rolling the dice every call. Because like I do donation phone calls. So if someone gives to me already in the same year, what are the odds they're going to give to me again? Sometimes it's very likely, but sometimes it's not. So it's all rolling the dice. And so far, the dice haven't rolled on all sixes for me. So it's we'll see what happens tomorrow. But like it's a rough gig, but it does pay well, so I can't really complain. But at the same time, I do a lot of it. But what else? I miss food service, man. You know, everyone makes fun of working at McDonald's, but I was like, that's probably the best job you could have. Because, like, for someone, like, in their early 20s, that's the best job you could have. Because it's, like, you could choose your schedule pretty much. It's flexible. And you can just, there's benefits. It's good. It's good on a resume, too. Like, McDonald's would be a good job. Call centers, like, pretty much their ultimate and last option, but somehow, some way, they've definitely helped develop on my podcast and how I sound. So I give them credit for that, but I don't give credit for the miserable people I talk to every day. But there's some good ones too. But that's a whole new world. That's a whole new thing. But what else? Why are people driving in their cars by themselves with their COVID masks on? What's the point? It's in the air. It's in the air. Oh my God. Can you like just take a deep breath and step back for a second and realize how dumb you look? Just a quick tidbit on that. I want to look at the MLB playoff standing, actually. And yeah, I'm on my computer. I'm cheating. Where are we? 2020 regular season. Playoff picture. By the way, I have tickets for sale to Classic River City Wrestling, Rugged Rob Stardom versus Mentolo. So I'm going to try to get Rob Stardom on the show. He's a great wrestler, former NWA Canadian champion. That's going to be on Saturday, September 26th at Club St. Pete, 171 Dumillion Street. And Friday, October 30th. One second. Oh, I thought I had this. Oh, man. I swear, I hope I don't give you listeners COVID. Just kidding. Anyways, Friday, October 30th, Christian Wrestling Outreach, Sudanese Center, 129 Dagmar Street, featuring Wavell Star. Tickets are $20 in advance, $25 at the door, and for the Classic River City Wrestling, $15 in advance, $20 at the door. So that should be interesting as well. Check that out. Anyways, MLB playoff picture. We're looking at the number eight Cleveland Indians versus the number 1 Red Sox. I take the Red Sox. Yankees versus number 2 Rays. I take the Rays. Astros versus A's. I take the Astros. Blue Jays and Twins. I am going for Minnesota on this one. I love the Twins because Pat Neshek is one of my favorite players, and he played for the Twins. NL matchups, Giants and Dodgers. I'm going to go for the Giants. I hope they kill the Dodgers. I hate the NL because I'm a Diamondbacks fan. So I hate that NL division that the Diamondbacks are in. Number 7 Phillies versus number 2 Cubs. I'm going to take the Phillies as the underdog. Cardinals versus Braves. I'm going to take the Braves, and I'm going to take the Marlins over the Padres. That's just my prediction on it. Hockey. I'm thinking it's going to be Tampa Bay. I really think it's going to be Tampa Bay because, like they're good. Like, I really think they're good. Like, they're a team that they're winning the series 3-1. And I was going for the Islanders, but they've been lacking lately. I say Tampa Bay or Dallas. But don't count the Golden Knights out yet. Anyways, in wrestling news, we got some interviews coming up today. Kyle Shaw is going to be on the show tonight, like I mentioned earlier. We also have Kevin O'Doyle, the Boston Bruiser, going to be on the program. And they're going to give you guys some local wrestling news and some more tidbits on that on the episodes to come. As well, check out the daily news update. We are live every single day now on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, but we will be up on YouTube. So I'm just going to say Jordan Garber Now News Update every single day up on YouTube. Check that out. And don't just check it out, but please tell your friends and spread the word of this podcast. You know, I finally get to live my dream doing what I love to do, and I love it when new people listen each and every week. And I promise you guys that there's going to be some referral rewards for doing so. We're going to come up with a game plan. Anyways, the whole retribution, I'm just going to reveal this shit to you guys because I thought the faction, it's all right. I kind of like it. It's kind of like a Nexus ripoff, but like it's given away. I forget who they are. It's Mercedes Martinez, Dominic Dijakovic, who I actually met in Hopkins, Minnesota. Really nice guy. And then, what else? Who else is it? Shane Thorne, Mia Yim, and I think Mojo Raleigh. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, that's Retribution. I hope they go further with this storyline. Kind of generate some more heat. Let's see what they can do with it. Give that some time. I think that should be really good. Anyways, I always appreciate suggestions on interviews as well. Any wrestlers in your area you think should, get that push, get to be promoted, please let me know. I'll do everything and anything I can to promote them. And of course, just continue to support our great sponsors. Anyways, I'm going to talk about some more topics coming up. In the meantime, I'm just going to take a quick commercial break here on the Jordan Garber Now podcast. Do you enjoy talking to your favorite wrestling superstars? Well, Jordan Garber Now has an opportunity for you. For only $5.99, you get to have a 10 to 15 minute conversation with any of your favorite Jordan Garber Now interviewees. Send me a Facebook message for more information. Alright guys, welcome to the Jordan Garber Now demographic update. We're going to provide this to you guys each and every week here, and I'm going to go through the whole rundown of our listeners. Now, it's amazing to know that we have listeners in Canada, and to go through that first are obviously at 78%. Canada is our top listening geographic location at 53%, with the top one being Manitoba at 78% within the country. And the listeners from Winnipeg have consisted of, obviously, the city I just said, Winnipeg leading at 98%, Oxford House, Thompson, Sandy Lake, Miami, Manitoba, and Lac du Bonnet all sitting at under 1%. The province of Alberta is sitting at 12% in the geographic location within the Canada demographic, with the Alberta's top listeners being Leduc, Alberta at 52%, Edmonton, Alberta at 29%, Calgary at 12%, and all Carstairs, Airdrie, Red Deer, and Medicine Hat sitting at 1% within the province. Ontario is 4% of the country's listens, as our top geographic location is Toronto, Ontario at 65%. However, we have other locations like Barrie sitting in second at 11%, and the others are Kitchener, Brampton, Mississauga, Guelph, London, Ontario, the future site of the Jordan Garber Now podcast, and Peterborough, Ontario, all sitting at 3%. Saskatchewan, the province of Saskatchewan, is sitting at 3%, and the top listeners there is Regina, sitting at 89%, and Langham and Weyburn sitting at 5%. British Columbia is sitting at 1%, with Vancouver at 40%, New Westminster at 20%. By the way, I do wish them all the support through that tough forest fire they've been going through. Richmond at 20%. And Delta at 20%. All the other notables under 1% are Quebec and New Brunswick. I won't go through them since they're under 1%. And that's Canada. That's pretty crazy. It all gets easier from here. I lost all my listening cities on my U.S. Demographic chart, but the United States of America is sitting at 40% of our total listens, and those top states is New Jersey at 23%. Washington at 19%, Virginia at 14%, California at 8%, Oregon and Texas at 4%, Florida and Illinois, Arizona, Michigan, New York at 2%, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Nevada, Tennessee, Georgia, are all at 1. There are lots of notables in the States under the 1% category in the States. Let's look at Ireland. 2% of our entire listens. Ireland has definitely been in a major market for us. It's been increasing each and every episode. And the top part is Leinster in Dublin and Ireland, and I believe that is in Dublin. The United Kingdom, France, Australia, Singapore, India, Brazil, Germany, Mexico, the British Virgin Islands, Belgium, Bulgaria, Italy, Saudi Arabia, Iran, South Africa, the United Arab Emirates. Sorry, Iraq I meant when I was saying that. Nigeria, Spain, Algeria, Nepal. I think I said I confused Algeria with Nigeria. Not Nigeria. Oh my goodness. So Nigeria, Algeria, Spain, Nepal, and last but not least, Russia, all sitting at under 1%. That's amazing. The entire world is listening to this podcast, and I remember when I got it back going in Wisconsin when I interviewed Mr. Kennedy, and that was at Copperfest in Oconto, Wisconsin in 2016. Definitely some good times there. I was on the road with Travis Cole and Danny Duggan. Big shout out to them. But our top listening platforms, moving on, platforms, I should say. I can't talk today clearly. Let me grab a sip of water. There we go. So our top apps, listening platform apps, is Apple Podcasts at 30%, Anchor, which you're listening to on right now probably, at 16%, Spotify at 12%, and the others at 42%. And top devices, yes, it does get pretty critical. The iPhone is sitting at 28%, the web, the good old internet, is sitting at 14%, the Mac is sitting at 5%, and Android is sitting at 3%, and all others are at 50%. Gender, male, 84%, female, 12%, non-specified, 5%, and non-binary, 0%. That is all sourced from Spotify. Looking at our age demographics here, we have 18 to 22 years old sitting at 18%, 0 to 17 years old sitting at 1%, 23 to 27 years old sitting at 44%, 28 to 34 years old sitting at 13%, 35 to 44 years old sitting at 9%, and 45 to 59 years old sitting at 14%, and 60 plus sitting at 1%. That was your Jordan Garber Now demographic update. More action to come on the podcast. Are you a wrestling fan? And do you like collecting wrestling merchandise? Well, Hot Shots Retro Rewind and Wrestling Collectibles is the place for you. They have t-shirts, action figures, DVDs, and autographs available. Check it out. Hot Shots Retro Rewind and Wrestling Collectibles on their public Facebook group. Alright, welcome back to the Jordan Garber Now podcast. You guys are listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, as well as many other platforms. And we are here with the current Cloud9 Wrestling Heavyweight Champion, none other than Bobby Brennan. Bobby, man, welcome to the program. Great to have you on. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Jordan. Thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate this, man.
No problem at all. It's actually great to have someone like yourself on. You've been wrestling for 4 years. You have a great resume on your hands, and it actually all started with a very well-respected wrestler in the Illinois area by the name of Matt Cage. Kind of just tell us about those humble beginnings, getting your foot in the door, and just getting to your first match.
So it's funny that you kind of asked that because, so down here in North Dakota, I'm based out of Minot. There's no wrestling schools in North Dakota, and a lot of kids are really lucky now that there's stuff like the Academy over in Minnesota. I didn't have stuff like that, so I had to learn under a wrestler, and obviously it was Matt Cage. He took me under his wing. I used to drive 2.5 hours to a show based out of Williston. I would train there. I would drive the shows in Fargo, Botno. I would train here in Minot, and just kind of worked on the basics and stuff. And how Cage viewed it was the fact that if he can get me get enough of the basics down to the point it's pretty much acceptable enough that I can learn on the job. So I learned my basics. I learned how to bump, run ropes. I learned how to execute moves. And then pretty much from there on, I ended up getting my first match, and I worked with Matt Cage. He was under a different gimmick, though. He was under his masked character gimmick. So we did that at the opener of the show, and then kind of from there on, I just kept working until now. So.
That's awesome, man. And you know, it all began for you in Fully Loaded Wrestling by working the likes of Christian Rose, the masked character, the Mason Mayhem, working with him, facing Guns and Beer, Darren Corbin, Tommy Lee Curtis. I can go on and on and on. How was those matches at the Vegas Motel? Because that was one of your first venues in Minot, in your hometown. So working in your hometown, did you have a lot of friends and family come along? And what did you learn in the beginning in terms of chemistry?
So, first of all, the Vegas Motel is probably almost my favorite venue to this day, just for the sole purpose of the balconies, because the balconies ended up playing such a huge role. I did have friends and family that would show up, and they would all stand on the balconies, and then they ended up making a banner and renamed it the Buckshot Balcony, because I went by Buckshot for my first 3 years. So they named it the Buckshot Balcony. I've actually been thrown from that balcony before during a ladder match. There's a couple videos of, I got thrown from the first one, so I would say it's about like a 14-foot drop. I had Guns and Beer actually throw me, and then we've done that. So yeah, that venue means a lot to me.
Was it Bo God or Duke Cornell?
What's up?
Was it Bo God or was it Duke Cornell who threw you?
Bo God or Duke?
Bo God.
It was Duke and Joey Anderson. Those were the two at the time. That was Guns and Beer.
Yeah.
And then landed on Kenny Sutra, Christian Rose. I think we landed on a bunch of guys. I think like a big brawl broke out, and that's how a big crowd formed, and we ended up throwing me into them, knocked over a bunch of security guards, everything in between. It was good times.
Definitely, that's crazy. You know, Fully Loaded Wrestling. Definitely, I almost went there to a show in Fargo actually, and I wasn't able to make it because I actually worked that day. But I'm definitely, once this whole pandemic and all this stuff that we're going through, man, this settles down, I'm definitely gonna be checking out some of that. Just all kinds of wrestling in North Dakota because it's a very underrated scene. And I do want to talk about the Minnesota scene as well, kind of transitioning on. You worked against a wrestler by the name of Sterling Bond. Now, when this guy trained, I started talking to him because I used to travel with the likes of Danny Duggan on the road to those shows in Minnesota and watch some matches. And this is right when Sterling Bond started, and I just knew he had a lot of potential and he had a bright future. So you worked him and Darren Corbin too, like such a great guy. So what was it like working for 7-Star for that show there in Fridley?
So it's funny because 7-Star was my first out-of-town show. If I remember right, I did that show, and that was the first time that I was going outward due to the fact that Fully Loaded shut down, like, before that show. Fully Loaded had a couple different closures. They went through a couple different bosses, but that's like a whole other thing. But yeah, the first closure, I said I gotta go expand, so I went to Minnesota, and then I met and wrestled Sterling Bond. I've worked with Darren Corbin prior, but we wanted to do something different, so we were going to do originally it was a triple threat match they had us scheduled for, and they said, you know what, Sterling Bond and Darren Corbin will tag team, and they'll face Brennan, and Brennan doesn't have a partner, so Brennan just pulls out a broom and says, I can beat you guys with my tag partner being a broom. And then, yeah, I ended up tag teaming with the broom, and I won that night. So
that's crazy, you know. And I think I remember watching that match too. I think it was somewhere on the internet. But you know, Illinois. You know, you also started doing more out of town shows from there on. You worked in Fargo at the Southwest Youth Hockey Arena, and you know, you also did more shows at your favorite venue, the Vegas Motel, before making your debut in 01 USA. Where Stephen King, not the author, unfortunately, but the wrestler.
No, not the author.
He defeated you there in Maroa, I believe. Is that how you even pronounce it? But
I think that's how
01.
I think it's how you say it. I didn't really know how to say the town's name.
But 01, man. For a young person like yourself,
Mhm.
that's pretty good to have on your resume. So how did that stand out for you?
So being at 01 was really cool. I was really young when I went there. I wish I'd kind of be able to go back there and reprove myself. I was just so young at the time. I met Bob Holly. He was on the show. Surprisingly, whatever people say about Bob Holly,
Amazing guy.
I can't say the same. He is so nice. Like everybody has said, he's just kind of loud and he might be kind of mean, but he's a really nice guy. Gave a lot of good advice. He was real polite. Talked about weightlifting some. I met my Mia Yim. She watched my match. If you look at some of the pictures in the background, you can see her standing there in the doorway observing. And then yeah, it was a good experience. I like it down there. Really cool people down there. The Warhorse, Jake Parnell. I was buddies with him. We used to work together at Fully Loaded, and then he was obviously the 01 champion at the time. So it was a great experience, man. I hope one day I can go back. Really.
Yeah, man. And I like how you brought up Bob Holly because there's an experience I did with him in Wisconsin where I kind of came into kind of a little like afraid because I'm like, oh boy, how is he gonna act if I ask
you
him
hear
for an
stories
interview?
about him.
But the thing is I asked him for an interview and he was so honest with me. Like he's like, I'll be honest, man, I totally don't want to do it. But I'll tell you what, you seem like a good guy, and like we had a conversation about NASCAR, and then he like introduced me to his wife, who's a really, really nice person. And like just the whole experience with Bob was nice. We talked about like sports, NASCAR, and then he sent me like I was going through a tough time in my life, losing a family member and all that. And Bob Holly sends me this long message on Twitter. He sent me a message on Twitter saying about how when I met him, I was very respectful to him and his wife. And like from Bob Holly, getting that, like.
That's pretty cool.
That was really awesome because you know what, a legend like that to say that you showed respect, like holy crap, that means I'm going in the right direction. And if I go to wrestling school with that same attitude, man, the sky's gonna be the limit for me, no matter how small I am, because like you need charisma in this business, and I'm not trying to oversay myself, but I know I have that. When they say you got it. I might not have it physically, but verbally, man, I know I can do something on the mic. So, like, talking to Bob Holly, he really boosted my spirits. Because it's always, people second guess themselves in this business all the time. But when you overcome that second guessing, that's how people like yourself, too, as well, become very successful. That's for sure. I'm sure you'd agree.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, for sure, Bob Holly, he's a good dude. I like Bob Holly.
You also came back here to our neck of the woods, where Now Studios is located in Winnipeg, Manitoba, making your debut at the Palomino Club. I have a lot of stories there, man. There's a lot of times where I had a lot of snake bites. They have their snake bite shot, which is like their tequila, and it's something else. And like I would just hang out with my friends there all the time, and then they ran the wrestling show there, and then it was raining. I don't know if you remember that. It was raining.
I remember because I went and tore down the
45
ring, had to set it back up into the inside of like the dance floor type area.
Yeah, right inside, and you guys had to do that at a very fast time because the rain was going down. I wasn't there, but I heard about this, and you were working Roy Flash Gordon that night. But before you talk about that, the rain's pouring down. You have a sellout right now. What's going through your mind? Like, are you just trying to get everybody on board and just say, fuck it, let's do this?
Like, before I have the match or after the match or when I'm getting the ring moved?
Let's talk about the ring before the match. Like, you getting that ring down during the ring. Like, you're in a sold-out, very well-known venue here in Winnipeg. That was filmed for Shaw TV, as a matter of fact. They got a lot of news headlines. So, like, during this whole time, what is going through your mind? It might be it kind of seems fucked up to you. It's raining, and you got to get this in 30 minutes. It seems impossible. You guys somehow do it. So, what was your mindset the whole time during that?
So, when I was I was sitting before the match. We were actually nervous it was going to start raining. I actually was able to get through my match because I think I was the opener. We did the opening and then, or we were like the second or third match. And I just remember we had to go do we had to like go out there and like present ourselves as the tournament entries and stuff. And I remember I was already nervous. I was nervous about if it was going to rain during our match, and luckily it didn't, but it ended up doing it later on, obviously. And I remember I was just really off that night. It was probably like, to me, it was probably one of my worst performances. Like, Roy was so good, like, and he was just so fast. And I just remember I got kicked, and I remember it just I remember just feeling off. And as soon as I got kicked, and I got kicked pretty hard, and I was just like, oh, that just all the energy sapped out of me. I remember just sucking wind, and I never get tired in the ring. I never like I could go for 30 minutes completely straight. I never gas out. But I remember it was 2 minutes in, and I got kicked like he did like a spinning back kick, and just connected kind of low. And I remember just sucking wind. I just couldn't do anything.
Yeah, you know what? It's like that feeling when like when I was a kid in school, me and my friends would go around and play fight, and like then you get punched in the stomach, and then you get go through the ground. Like it was probably like one of those things you feel that pain when you get punched in the stomach. Like those back kicks, you got to be careful. Like I remember as a ref, I took a really nasty clothesline once, and it was my own fault from Sidney Steele, and he just told me to stand there in the middle, and me moving my neck around like an idiot. He got me right on the nose, and still to this day, I kind of feel it. Like I got hit pretty damn hard, and hey man, that's my own fault. But you know what? It looked legit, and man, I don't know if it was filmed, but it should have been. It was really good ending to the match. And you know what? Sometimes you gotta put your body on the line and do that. And you don't know it until after, but at the end, yeah, I screwed up, but hey, it still looked good somehow, some way. So I can't really complain. It's just another experience in the book. But I love sitting in the studio, man, just as a podcast or just hearing these stories because, it's not every day where you hear a wrestling show rains and everything. And I wouldn't worry about your match with Gordon because I actually still saw that. And I still thought it was pretty good, in my opinion. So,
well, I'm glad you still enjoyed it.
Yeah, no problem. Every match isn't going to be like match of the year candidate, right? Like every podcast, like I've had so many shitty ones. Like I interviewed John Cena Sr. once, actually, John Cena's dad.
Oh, really?
And it was probably one of my worst performances as a journalist and podcaster. My audio was off. Like, imagine how I sound now, but like literally on your lowest volume setting on your phone, and it just sounded like shit.
That's a shame.
Who knows? I hope his son didn't listen to it. Certainly, that would be a shame. But
yep,
because it doesn't really get much better than that. But
yeah.
Anyways, moving forward, let's talk about your experience in Midwest All-Star Wrestling in Minnesota. Also MWE. Let's talk about MAW first. You had quite a few matches there in the American Legion, also in St. Paul, Minnesota. And in Savage, Minnesota. So talk about that whole promotion altogether and its developments.
So for MAW has to be it's like almost like my second love. Like I love that promotion so much. And like, I don't know if any of like the management or a lot of the guys I've worked with will even hear this, but honestly, I love doing everything there. Like those guys gave me an opportunity when really nobody else was. So after 7-Star I only was able to do one match there, and then they just kind of went quiet. They started doing other stuff and just never really went back. But I went back to Minnesota then when my little brother became a wrestler, and they booked me and him together, and we always wanted to do that. So we ended up taking a train. We went down there, we performed, and then we hopped back on a train, and they said they liked their stuff, and geez, we've been going back out like almost ever since. And then I became we ended up doing some tag stuff. We did our friend or foe tag team over there. It's part of me and my little brother Jack Ledger. That's our tag team. We do friend or foe. We did that for a little bit. We ended up breaking up, as you know, as the name friend or foe. We don't ever know if we like each other or not. And then I ended up joining a group named The Movement. It consisted of a couple of guys: Paul Verk, Shane Black, Craven Knight. There were so many. Riley Jackson. There were so many a part of the original Movement group, but oh god, I had so much fun. Like, I wrestled JDX there. That was my first out of town main event that I ever did. And shout out to JDX because he's awesome. That dude looks like $1,000,000. He moves great. He's just a good human being too. It's overall just so nice. I have a lot of respect for JDX. So shout out to JDX. Shout out to everybody that was a part of the group and the movement. Yeah, I just got nothing but positive things to say about MAW. I really hope when they start running again that I can head back out there and continue my career with them. And then for MWE, I didn't do as many shows for them. I did meet fun people along the way with them, though. Me and my brother did friend or foe for them. We wrestled a tag team with Ethan Matthews and another guy named Brock, and then we ended up having probably one of my favorite tag matches of all time. So, yeah, MWE has a pretty special place too, but I wouldn't say as much as MAW, just as I was there much longer, and I've done a lot more things and a lot more matches.
Well, let's save like one of the best in your career, best friends in your career for last in this interview, and let's talk about Cloud9 Wrestling. If you want, you can stick around with us and talk about some news for the extra 5 minutes, but your experience with Cloud9 Wrestling, man, you're the current heavyweight champion, facing and beating the best in the company. Kind of share your experience and thoughts on not just your time there, but the whole startup together.
So, my time with Cloud9 it's been good. It's almost just like it's what Fully Loaded should have been. It's like we try making better decisions than what Fully Loaded did. They made a lot of mistakes. And we just tried to correct them, and honestly, I enjoyed my time there. I loved working with a lot of the Canadian talent and the Nebraska talent that comes up, like Duke Cornell, Joey Anderson. It's just such a unique mix. I've always said that I think Cloud9 has the most unique card in the Midwest, as we're not consistently made of just North Dakota wrestlers, not of just Nebraska, Omaha guys. We're not made up of just strictly local Minnesota guys. We're a mix of like almost the entire Midwest. We got a little part of Minnesota. We got North Dakota, Canada. We have Nebraska. Like, we're almost just, you name it, we got someone from there. So it's just, I really enjoy being a part of Cloud9, and I'm so proud to be their second champion of all time, and then the longest reigning champion.
You know, let's say there's a show next Friday there at Cloud9 Wrestling, and it was either done in Berthold, Minot, or its other venue in Williston. Out of those venues, what is the best one in terms of crowd reaction and response? Which one would you rather like wrestle out of those three? Which is the best venue to do?
It's hands down Minot at the Clarion Hotel.
Hometown pride.
Yep, we call it the stadium. The building we perform is it's called the Coliseum. It's a part of the Cloud9. It's part of the Clarion Hotel. That's where Cloud9 is at, and it's such a big venue, and just the crowds get so loud, and just the Minot crowd is just so different. It's just one of the most unique crowds you'll ever be at. They're just so invested, and there's been wrestling here for so long. It's been consistently made up of almost the same guys that we planted our seed here years ago when I wasn't even involved, and when guys that I knew were just starting. Like, so that's what makes Minot just so special is just that a lot of places don't get something like that, a hometown promotion that just kept evolving over time, passed on the new people, and had different influences. So yeah, I would say it's Minot.
Let's keep going on about Cloud9. Actually, your last four matches they were really awesome, and it's
Mhm.
definitely it's more of a 2020 reflection as well, going into things with this whole pandemic and everything. But you wrestled AJ Sanchez at the Grudge, winning the title itself, and then you won. You were successful in your 3 title defenses against Tommy Lee Curtis in Minot at the Clarion Hotel, and
Mhm.
against Joseph Anderson and AJ Sanchez. So out of those 4 matches, with this whole past year being what it's been, what are those 3 that have really been a huge standout to you and been your, because it's going to be a while since we have live crowds again, so reflecting back out of those 4, which one would you pick as the match of the year candidate so far?
That's so hard because they're all just so special in their own right.
Memorable too.
Like, just they all have their own aspects. Whether it was the first match with AJ, me taking the belt with, like, from the point I tried to lift him the entirety of the match. I try to pick him up in the beginning, can't do it, back gives out. I attempt again, I just barely get him up, but he rents the eyes and I go back down. And to the finally at the end when I stop him from going off the top rope and I load him to my shoulders and I got to walk 370 pounds to the middle of the ring. Just that match is so special. But then we go to Tommy Lee Curtis, somebody who I think is one of the most underrated wrestlers that a lot of companies should have took their shot with that guy. They should have put a belt on him. They should have utilized him more. He is so smart, and he's just, I love that match. It's just, he has so many different layers to his gimmick and just his overall performance. He has a manager, he has a henchman, he has the elastic bands, he has just, it's just so hard to describe just how well put together he is. And then Joseph Anderson, somebody who the first day I saw him, I saw something special in Joey. He was a brawler that just, he stood out. And I don't know, man, it felt like a fight, like when I was with him. And it was great because it was just like, it was something different. We just utilized different, I got to utilize my MMA and he utilized just straight vicious brutality-esque just approach to wrestling, and it was great. And we weren't in front of a huge crowd either. That's what was the awesome part. There was like maybe like 70 people there in like a little Williston like community area deal, and the crowd was just on fire. It was I had so much fun. So it's so hard to pick one, but if I had to say which one just off the top of my head, I'm just gonna go with AJ, just because that match was just such a shock. It just really was. Just there was just so much to it that it's hard to explain.
Yeah, I totally hear you. Now, let's go into some news quick before we do the top 3 and do your plugs here. I just want to go through a quick news and notes and get a wrestler's perspective and commentary on one of them. And the topic I want you to commentate on is AEW has defeated NXT in the head-to-head battle. And it's, previously looking at this ratings battle, it's been very to the nose to nose. But right now, AEW Dynamite, 886,000 viewers. WWE NXT, 689,000 viewers. What are your thoughts? And as a wrestler, just being a wrestler, not a fan, what product are you watching instead?
So I don't really know how to feel about ratings overall, and like I just don't know. Like I don't think the numbers don't mean too much to me, but for some people they kind of really mean a lot. Like I have a couple of buddies who we talk about it once in a while and stuff. But
I hear you.
Is pretty much the question comes down to which product do I enjoy more as even just more of a wrestler and not as much as a fan.
Yeah, even things like that, even like from a wrestler standpoint, what's getting more out of your study time?
Me, NXT. That's a no-brainer. Just there is so, like over like the last two, I would say just even the last 2 years, like there was that's all I watched was NXT. I didn't watch anything else. I just nothing did it for me, and just guys, everyone in the era is so good. The Undisputed Era tag team matches, the Adam Cole matches he had with Gargano, the matches Gargano had with Ciampa, just you can't tell me that the greatest wrestling in the world isn't right there. And just, I don't know, the AEW shows just, I don't mean to like, just say I don't enjoy the product, but like a lot of the times it falls flat for me. Like I had like really high hopes for a couple of the shows that I watched, and I ended up watching them, and they kind of just, I didn't get what I needed out of it. I almost walked out of it more exhausted. I just was by the time the show was over, I was like, dude, I almost don't even want to see the last three matches. And then, yeah, it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just too much for me. Maybe I just can't absorb it all. But a lot of people enjoy it, and I think it's awesome. I think, don't get me wrong, I think at the end of the day, it's great that there are more major promotions out there now. There's more guys getting jobs. Like when Miro, like Rusev, he ended up coming in.
That was a great debut.
How do you say it? Miro?
Miro, I think. I think it's Miro.
Miro? Okay, yeah. When he came in, I was glad to see he got signed because the guy has a job now. He's gonna make a living, and I think that's awesome. I don't want anybody in wrestling to have to get released in a time when they probably shouldn't have been released. In all reality,
especially when you have to put food on the table.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is what they do. Like, they're not like, I would hate for these guys to have to go and work construction, have to go do like just regular stuff after being a wrestling celebrity. Like, that just isn't right. And then guys, especially if they're talented too, like it's awful. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be watching NXT over AEW. That's the answer.
Awesome stuff. Well, and other quick notes here, just for those other quick few seconds. Gerald Briscoe reveals his big announcement. MLW also signs LaPark Jr. and Will Hobbs signs with AEW. I'm going to discuss that on the news update. But before we get to your plugs, we always do something each and every interview, and it's called the Top 3. And it's always a positive top 3, and that's in terms of what we talked about earlier. Everyone, I should get a t-shirt that says this, because it's my favorite question to ask. Chemistry. Who are the 3 top wrestlers that you've worked with so far in your career that you've had the best chemistry with overall?
Overall chemistry?
Yeah.
I would say AJ Sanchez. That's right there. Just, we mix very well. I would have to say Joey Anderson. Just overall, every time we touched, that even if we only got to have one singles match, every time that we touched outside of it.
Are you looking for the best vehicle for your needs at an affordable budget? Well, Hickman Auto Sales and Financing has exactly what you're looking for. Choose from a wide variety of vehicles like the 2012 Hyundai Tucson GLS, the 2016 Chrysler 200LX, and the 2020 Chevrolet Tahoe. All trades are accepted and paid off, and child tax, pension, disability, EI, social assistance, or self-employed are all approved. Low payments of $0 down. For more information, call 204-898-3511 or visit HickmanAutoFinancing.com. Tell them Jordan Garber Now sent you. All right. Well, we have right now on the Jordan Garber podcast, he calls himself the president of wrestling. None other than Phil Stamper, fellow wrestling journalist, as well as pro wrestler. Man, welcome back to the show. It's been like 3 years. You just disappeared, and now you're back. So, welcome.
Thank you. It's been quite a while. And to be fair, many people call me the president of wrestling, not just me.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, you definitely, I've seen what you've been doing back in your scene, creating a name for yourself in the media world, reaching press on the East Coast, and, of course, being a great professional wrestler at the same time. But let's talk about what you've been up to these 3 years. How's the scene been altogether? I believe the last time we were in touch was around the days of South Jersey WrestleFest when I almost made that trip down there. But since then, what's been up with you? You know, there's been a lot of great wrestling going on in Pennsylvania. A lot of alumni making it to the WWE and Combat Zone putting on just a terrific product as usual. So, like, altogether, what are some highlights of the past 3 years for yourself?
Well, I was with CZW and I've since left. It was time to step away from them. I have been involved with MCW Pro Wrestling as their general manager. It's weird because, like, you referenced the president of wrestling thing. Well, it became because I was starting to become the authority figure in multiple promotions. So MCW Pro Wrestling, that runs primarily out of Maryland, also has events in Delaware, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. Began to be the general manager for a company called Classic Pro Wrestling down in Virginia, IWA East Coast in West Virginia, a number of other companies. So I've stayed pretty active, as well as taken on a leadership role within Wrestling Revolver, which runs in the Midwest of the United States, from Ohio out to Iowa, as well as whenever there's a WrestleMania, we're typically wherever WrestleMania is at too.
That's crazy. You know, what are some of the highlights of your scene? Like, if you could point out like three parts about the scene right now that you could just enjoy and share with everybody that enjoys the product, what would they be?
Oh wow. I like MCW Pro Wrestling from the inside of the wrestling game perspective, because it's one of the most organized wrestling companies I think I've ever worked with. High quality of production, good recognition with name talent, and working with all of the major promotions at some point in the last 2 years. So we had a taping for Impact Wrestling. We have brought in current WWE folks to do meet and greets with us, current folks with AEW. So we've kept up a good relationship with multiple partners. Wrestling Revolver is hot. And almost any time we have an event, it gets such buzz around it, and the crowd is like nothing else. When we're out in Iowa, we're getting attendance of 600 to 800 people. When we are in Ohio, we're getting about a crowd of 500 people. So it's just very engaging. Impact Wrestling joined Wrestling Revolver for an event back in December, and on the little leg of the tour that we were on, we had the highest drawing event for that weekend. So very proud of the work that we've done with Wrestling Revolver and the attention that it's getting from the wrestling world.
That's crazy. And that's the thing about wrestling is, like, I found it so hard to advertise in such a market, and that's the thing about Winnipeg Wrestling. That's why I'm really happy that it's been successful, is because it's just been overall generating a great reaction, and it's been hard to advertise. As a matter of fact, my top advertising markets, people listening right now in the countries of Nepal, Russia, Saudi Arabia, but it seems to be harder to promote it in the U.S. market because it's oversaturated with other standouts. So it kind of seems like you have to it's like, what is it, the Amazing Race? Like, you have to be one of the best to stand out, and I seem like it happens in bits and times, as not as relevant as other scenes, but it's definitely good to see what you're promoting get out there huge, because there's definitely a lot of competition in Pennsylvania, but at the same time, it should be more people working together. And when I feel that more people work together, you definitely get a way bigger result. And I'm seeing more of that too, which is a positive as well.
Absolutely, and you're seeing in the countries you just mentioned a new reinsurgence of professional wrestling in those companies. I mean, certainly in Saudi Arabia, the WWE goes there, but they're even starting to grow some homegrown talent in the Saudi Arabia area. When it comes to Russia, surprisingly, deathmatch wrestling has spiked inside of Russia. That isn't necessarily my favorite genre, but I'm seeing a lot come from there of that genre, and it's pretty good. So they're doing pretty well when it comes to the world of wrestling.
That's crazy. What are some guys right now that have stood out to you this past 2 years that definitely deserve that big shout out? Just some guys in your scene that have just gone above and beyond.
Oh wow, that's a hard question. I mean, and one thing is there have been so many people recently signed. Think 2 years ago when people were just sort of finding out about MJF, and he just main evented the main event of AEW in their pay-per-view. So there is such an amazing talent that's out there. I think some of the younger guys that are about to come up, I love Carter Mason, who's from the Toronto area. I love Cole Radrick, and Sage Phillips, who are both from Indiana. Nolan Edwards, who's from Michigan. Actually, he's a Canadian expat, and now he lives in the United States. Nolan Edward, not no S, just Edward. Gia Scott out of Maryland. She is part of the. I was going to say she's part of the ROH developmental talent, but I actually don't know if she is officially part of their developmental roster or is just taking advantage of being able to work out with their team. So she's another one to keep an eye on in the near future. Wesley Crane out of Texas. Carver, the Carver of Cutter's Alley, who is a serial killer wrestler out of the Midwest, and he is, carving a path for himself in pro wrestling right now.
Yeah, that's crazy. No, it looks like there's definitely a lot of standouts as well. What are your thoughts right now, like what they're doing with the Thunderdome and everything? I see that it's definitely something that's cool, but there's been a lot of things that people have gone away with in terms of racial remarks and everything. I'm not going to go too much into it, but is the Thunderdome for you like a thumbs up or a thumbs down at this point in time?
I am more okay with it than less okay with it. I mean, I do think it's a great opportunity to get people in front of the wrestlers. I think it's an interesting dynamic visually to show people, because from some camera angles you actually sort of forget for a moment that isn't a crowd filled with people. It's filled with people who are at home, who are video cameraing in. I think it actually is going to be a good thing for wrestling, because the WWE really is the mainstay. They are the mainstream way people understand professional wrestling. And so much of what's happened over the last couple of years, and not just couple, but really this last decade, if you really look at it, from the moment that Edge called out Cena and said Cena sucks, up until now, that the crowd in person was responding very differently than the product the WWE wanted the at-home audience to accept. And even to the point of how they would manipulate audio, how they would cover up when people were, 3 years ago, I went to Battleground in Washington, D.C., and the loudest heel response of the night was towards Roman Reigns. And I went back home and I watched it, like, how are they going to fix this? And they totally fixed it. And if you were at home, you wouldn't have known that Roman Reigns almost literally got booed out of the building. And by far, he was the loudest negative response in that entire event. And then conversely, Bray Wyatt at that time, I mean, he was in the middle of the fireflies and everybody's holding up their phone, and the way they lit the whole building was amazing to see in person. But the crowd sometimes in person is not giving the response that WWE wants for their television product. And WWE, let's not pull that punch, is a television property first before it really is a wrestling event. And so this allows them to reset their crowd. This allows them to feed new levels of expectations, because now the product that they want you to accept at home is the product that the live crowd is now going to respond to, and they can blend both their audio with piped-in audio now, and it gives it a different kind of sensation that I think will really reset the crowd and really recreate the tone on how they're going to move forward, in let's say a year when live crowds can come back.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Like, I like your perspective on that, and you really have that insider's perspective, and I feel like, I haven't stepped in the ring much, but you being a wrestler, and doing it in the past full time, and still currently, like, you kind of have that opinion known from perspective that really generates a lot of relationship with the fans and wrestlers and agreeing with your statements. But what do you think right now, like Gallows and Anderson? I remember that time they left WWE, and I did an interview with Gallows, and I knew that I had two questions to ask, and I wanted to hit a home run. And I did. I asked about, I think it was something about AJ Styles and his reaction when he left the company. I had to come up with something hot. And it was on Wrestle Talk TV, it was everywhere. And I knew that I hit that home run. And then they've been making an Impact Wrestling. I like how I say that twice. And I also, before we move on, I do want to apologize for my typing in the past there to our listeners from around the world. was in the middle of doing some merchandise emails. But, of course, that is done and over with. But I do want to apologize because you guys are going to hear that typing in the background. And I know my friends are going to sit there and say, hey, you know what? You typed. I heard typing. That's not right. It's like, you got to do what you got to do. You know, we're quite a busy company and quite a busy organization. But let's talk about, like, Gallows and Anderson in Impact. Like, didn't you expect them in AEW? Like, their hype over their release was hot. So how was that reaction for you when they debuted at Slammiversary, and what do you think of them now still?
I really was surprised to see them at Impact, just because, again, I thought the talk was leading more towards them at AEW. I don't know what ultimately made that decision. I'm going to guess it was piecemeal, because if you had an opportunity to talk at Shopomania, but how did they word it? What was the catchphrase for the pay-per-view? It was like the worst wrestling event ever, the worst pay-per-view ever. I loved it. I laughed through it. I thought it was just entertaining. But maybe there were, and I brought that up just because they had a segment that featured the Young Bucks on it. That was a pre-taped segment, but it's like, okay, well, they wouldn't have gotten that if they left such a bad taste in the mouths of the Bucks. That wouldn't have aired on Talkin' Shopomania if that was the case. So, I think that they have gone somewhere where they're probably going to be comfortable, where they're happy in that environment. Maybe there's things that we don't know about that give them that edge. Maybe certain, who knows? Who knows what either in contract or with creativity or with being allowed to work certain talents in the ring. Who knows? Just the end of the day, the better business deal might have been with Impact. So I'm happy to see them anywhere, to be very honest, and I'm glad they landed somewhere where they seem to really be enjoying themselves.
A lot of when I interviewed Al Snow, the one thing I like to ask is, like, I always ask for advice on tapes to watch. I love tapes. Mm-hmm. Tapes is knowledge. So, like, when I asked Al Snow what should I watch, he told me the best crowd pop he could possibly get was from World Class Championship Wrestling in the 80s. Now, what's something that's on your watch list? You're watching tapes tonight. What are you going to put on there? What's something that is for study night?
Well, it's funny that you brought up World Class, because my favorite wrestler of all time is Eric Embry, who was very much in that World Class era. ESPN Classic was a cable channel that, actually, I don't know if that channel still exists or not, but at the time it was
yes.
Okay, excellent. It was showing old World Class and old USWA stuff and old Global. And Eric Embry probably had the hottest feud down in the Texas area for a while, because here you had Skandar Akbar, who was the manager, and the feud was really Skandar as a manager versus Eric Embry, the wrestler, and that Skandar would have this whole band of wrestlers to try to take out the one favorite wrestler next to probably the most favorite wrestler next to the Von Erichs in Texas. And the response the crowd gave him was so hot, and the way they built that story was amazing. And the way he would get so ramped up, Eric Embry would, to be able to fight back, was just such an amazing thing for me to watch as a fan. So I got into it from home. So the times there's on YouTube, I know there's actually a playlist collection of Eric Embry and Skandar Akbar that I could just sit back and watch for days in a row. I've tried to watch more footage from like independentwrestling.tv to just see what's out there now. I like watching the current products that are out there. Actually, earlier this evening, I did an independent wrestling party where it was let me showcase matches from other places. And I mentioned I'm not a deathmatch guy. Like, that's not necessarily the genre I follow. But at the same time, I watched Casanova Valentine and Kid Osborne have a death match in their backyard, and it was amazing. It was a good time. It was entertaining, and just sucked people right into it. And so, I like watching the current product as well and finding out like who's really showing up. I hate watching wrestling when the person doesn't really want to put their best foot forward, that they don't feel like. Maybe they don't feel like they have another thing that they're going to accomplish, so they're just where they're at. And it's like, well, I'm okay if somebody's at where they're at, but I want to watch them try to work harder than where they're at. I want to see them grow higher than where they're at and show that they have potential left to go. And that's what makes me enjoy wrestling, not oh, I'm watching the same guy I've seen 5,000 times before. Who is it going to give me anything different than these 4 moves of doom? I I want to see potential. I want to see growth. I want to get ready to really sit back and go, wow, this was cool. I didn't see this in this way before. I didn't watch it in this way before. This is going to make some noise. Um, like some of the guys I mentioned before, I think I forgot to mention like a Stephen Wolf out of the Chicago area is another guy to keep your eye on.
Yeah, I
He,
heard of him.
yeah, he will, he will
He has
turn
a good
heads.
shot.
Absolutely, he does, and he'll turn heads very, 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 very fast. And so, um, there's just so much great talent out there, and part of it is I don't know how to word it in a way, but like you don't know who's going to be the next guy called up for somewhere for one of these companies, and just really show us that he is going to be the next guy. And I remember the very first time I met Trey Miguel, and I was like, wow, he is actually a good person. And then, oh wow, he's talented in the ring. But he kept showing up, and he kept showing more, and he kept doing more, and he kept pushing himself and pushing himself and pushing himself, and he got all the way to the main event of Impact Wrestling. Um, and it was like he deserved to be there, and showed he deserved to be there, and still hits it out of the ballpark all the time. And so like I like seeing that continued growth and development. Ace Austin's another guy who's in Impact right now.
Oh, great
that you
worker.
right, you just keep seeing more and more and more. Madman Fulton. I mean, if you looked at when Fulton was in NXT to compare to what he is now, I think we're seeing so much more out of him now than he showcased in NXT.
Oh, way
and
more.
and he's in such a tremendous physical conditioning. Killer Cross, or now Caden Cross.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, or Carrion, not Caden, sorry. I mean, I was very fortunate to work with him at Revolver, and just, I mean, sharp as a tack. The first time I met him, I was like, this is the guy that's going to. I don't know why I'm going to say this in this way. He was the guy, and when I first met him, like, he's the next Randy Orton. He's the next guy that's going to make everybody go, oh. Like, he is that guy.
He has the look.
Right, he has that look. He has that personality that'll carry it. He has the definite in-ring ability as well, that confidence, and also a good person, like a good all-around guy. So I'm kind of like here cheering for him because I want to see so much more from him, because I know he's going to deliver so much more in the years to come.
So, like, what do you think about, like, the women's division right now in AEW? You know, it hasn't really been up to par as of late. In your opinion, it actually might have changed than mine. It might be different. But, like, do you think it's been improving recently, or is it still kind of lackluster?
I'll be honest, I struggle with that, because AEW is a very young company. And when they first came out on television, I think everyone out of the gate was like, they're the WWE level of everything. And when I remember when I first watched sort of their series of pay-per-view over summer 2019, I was like, this feels like I'm watching late 90s WCW in the way this is being filmed. And I don't know what that was that made that connection for me to think that. But I was like, I'm not getting this feel yet. Like, I see the talent, I see where they're at. I'm like, okay, I want the production to come up a little bit more, and I want the guys to come. When I say guys, everybody, men and women, to come up a little bit more. And you're right. For me, the women's side of things into AEW has not risen to the same level, and that's not a knock on any of that talent, because sometimes it doesn't necessarily have to be about the talent. It could be about the way that they're being perceived on television or through that television lens. I want more and better to come through. I think it's going to. I think it's just taking time for them to get there. And I'm really interested in seeing what they do next. And I think fans feel that. I mean, if you look at the ratings they've gotten just over the last couple of weeks, breaking that million viewer mark is a tremendous victory for them. And knowing that they're going to get a second show on TNT on top of the YouTube show that they have. And that the support that they're getting from their owner, Tony Khan, is really impressive to see. And so I think people feel that energy, and I think people are like, it's so raw right now, but that it's going to be more and more refined as they move forward, and it's going to be presented in an increasing manner that's going to make us want to watch that much more.
One person to watch. Oh, sorry. I always forget to turn my mic up there. There we go. One person to watch there at AEW. None other than Penelope Ford. She is someone that definitely has a great future there in the company. But one thing I do want to transition to, though, is if I can remember, and we were talking about Penelope Ford and AEW, but I was actually, there we go, I got it. You're talking about having that WCW feel, and I feel like TNA wrestling in 2006 and 2007 especially, and when Hulk Hogan came back, it was a very big replica of WCW within the early 90s and also the late 90s. Would you agree with that too?
I would agree. Well, what's weird is, I mean, remember when Impact first came, when TNA first came on the scene, it was like watching the continuation of WCW. And then AEW starts, and I'm like, wow, this feels like this is the continuation of WCW.
It just never ends.
Right, right. And it's part the production, part the way it's perceived. Oh, look, it's on TNT. I think so all of that came together maybe to give me that weird perception in the back of my brain. But with great leverage behind them, there could be some really great things ahead of them.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I never asked a wrestler this question. I remember that I sold merch before, but, like, what's the most you've ever seen a wrestler make in revenue for merch, or how much did you make yourself in merchandise? What's your record, and what's the most you've ever seen done?
Ooh. Probably the best person I've ever seen walk away with the highest amount in an evening is Sami Callihan. And I couldn't tell you a number off the top of my head, but 4 figures of merch, and just that the draw is not just a nickname for Sami Callihan. It really is how people are driven to him. They follow him. It's an interesting and sometimes a little scary sight to see, but he really does bring in that kind of revenue and that kind of attention when promotions bring him in. And promoters know it, and that's why they want him all the time. And that's why Impact has him, because they know that he has that quality that fans want to see, that he will grab their attention and he will drag them along with him, whether they want to or not, kicking and screaming, and then we'll also buy his merchandise. He's an amazing wizard at that kind of stuff, too, about how you rotate stock in your merchandise, too, to make it interesting for fans. Like, why would fans want to buy your stuff if you still have the same shirt that you've had the last 10 times you were there? Make it interesting. How do you rotate your stock in your own merchandise? I learned that from him. And he just has an amazing mind for that kind of stuff.
That's awesome stuff. So, what are some upcoming projects that you have coming up yourself? What are some big things that you have going on in terms of online? Because I know you're a very successful wrestling journalist as well, and you had some many great products and projects. But what's the next big thing for yourself?
So, right now, because of the pandemic and in my immediate geographic location, a lot of companies are not running. Maryland and Virginia and Delaware still cannot have live events. Pennsylvania is very restrictive. West Virginia is very restrictive. So Ohio still also has no events. So the base of a lot of the companies I work with currently are unable to run anything. So that's hurt a lot. So that's also, let me have some downtime for not promoting really much of those companies I work for. I have been maintaining the content for WrestlingCalendar.com. This was a project that got kicked off the ground right around the holidays, right after Thanksgiving, right into Christmas. Found a webmaster who was interested in starting up a calendar site, and he was involved with wrestling in the Arizona area, and he knew a lot of the Arizona, California guys and a lot of the companies there. And when we met up, I was like, well, I maintain this list of upcoming events and already have this spelled out, including events in Arizona and California. Do you want to take a look at it? And he did, and he's like, oh my gosh, I know how to make a database that can pull from your list, and we can build a site out of it. And so we started there with calendars, and now it's built out to how you can have profiles there. If you're a promoter, you can add yourself and even add your own events to there. And if wrestlers are on the site, you can tag wrestlers that are going to be appearing on your event as well. You can put in all your event information, your ticket information. It's really a very robust site that is. And I talked to the webmaster last week, and he just has all these ideas to make it continue to grow more at a time when there's not a whole lot of events out there. At the same time, there are still a lot of events out there. So wrestlingcalendar.com, I encourage everybody to sign up for it, especially if you're inside the business, to get your name out there more, to be able to post your own events. It is a tremendous site. I did work for a cinematic wrestling event that appeared on IWTV called Camp Leapfrog, and we'll be filming a sequel to that. I'm forgetting the name of it, but it's Halloween themed. So it'll be Camp Leapfrog at Halloween. I think it's Scary Things That Go Bump in the Ring. So that's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be taking place very soon at an undisclosed location nearby. And I've also been working on a cinematic project myself, so I've been working with different talent to just try to get them involved to be able to piece together something with them. So I've been sort of in the middle of that process myself, which is a new side for me, because though I know audio and video editing, it isn't my go-to skill all the time. So like this allows me to
I'm learning every day.
Right, exactly, and I can open up that door and further develop that skill a little bit more too.
No, that's actually really awesome. You know, acting in wrestling is really cool because, like, a lot of wrestlers like give advice, say, you know, take acting school, take drama school, go for those extra roles, try to get on set. And it really is good when you have that acting experience. Like, I remember I did a Zubaz commercial that was on local television, and then all of a sudden I have an IMDb page over one commercial. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. But it's like acting gets you more opportunities than you think. And when you're on a site like that, more people can talk to you and market with you. And when you're doing those extra roles, you're appearing in some pretty big movies. Obviously, no one's going to see you, but you're in the background. And that's something you can put on your resume. And to put that and mix that with wrestling just increases the amount of belief, storylines, and just everything in terms of working in front of a crowd as well, I believe.
That I understand, and I actually just got signed with an indie film that's going to be filming this coming summer. So I know that's a little bit further out, but with the pandemic, everybody's trying to plan ahead a little bit. So I have another horror movie I'll be working on coming this summer. I've also done some more voiceover work during this pandemic time. I'm even the voice for a university's call center, so that's been something different. And you have to keep pushing, and you have to keep creating content and make interesting reasons why people want to pay attention to what you're doing. So then when you do the other next thing, people go, oh, I really like this other thing you're doing too. Let me explore that. And then it continues to grow your base. So whether it's, wrestling is my life. Wrestling has been part of my life for a long time, and it's going to continue to be a part of my life. And I love acting too. And they don't have to be mutually exclusive, but I know some people. I have fans who watch me because I was on 2 Discovery ID TV shows, and so they religiously follow me because of that. And they don't really care as much for the wrestling. Well, some of them don't care as much for the wrestling stuff, and that's fine. And then some of them do. So then there's like this mutual agreed audience that's like, oh wow, you have both. That's really cool. And I have even started streaming content with gaming, and not all of my fans like gaming stuff, but then there's ones who do, and then there's new fans I get because of the gaming. So it's an interesting opportunity right now to look at how can I continue to build up a base, so then when I do whatever the next thing is, another movie, another wrestling project, like, oh, that many more people will be interested in.
Tell us a little more about like the whole call center part of the acting that you're doing, because I've been in that industry for 7 years, and man, has it been quite a journey to hell or heaven and back. I guess depends which place you can say I've worked at, but it's been quite the road. So what was that whole call center role all about? Because that's something I can certainly relate to, and many of our listeners can too.
So it was really about doing all the pre-recordings for all the voicemail systems that they have. So like, you call into a call center, here's the introductory message, then they have a call tree. Well, here's all the options for the call tree. Here's the messages they get when they're closed. Here's their emergency messaging system. And just recording a whole bunch of different options, and we'll still get calls about like, oh, we have to change this message up. can you do this? It's like, sure, this is, and so that's been different. That's been something neat. And actually, that same institution had me do a voiceover for well, not a commercial, but a social media video that they did just to talk about their safe return plans. That how, and this was over the summer when they weren't having some in-person classes and hybrid classes that they were focused on. We're still a community and we're still working on this together, and we're going to be stronger together, and we may be physically distant, but we're not always apart. That was kind of the messaging around it, and that was fun to do for them as well.
Well, we really appreciate you talking about some wrestling news with us, talking about your career, and even talking about your acting career. It's definitely really amazing. And before we let you go, man, you've been great. Thank you so much for being on again. It's been quite a while, but where can people follow you on social media? Because people are listening from Canada, United States, even all the way in New Zealand. So where can people check you out?
You can check me out anywhere there is social media at PS Phenom. That's PSPHENOM. So on Twitter, on TikTok, on Twitch, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, PS Phenom, PSPHENOM.
All right, man. Well, I really appreciate it again, Mr. Stamper, for being on the program. Any last words?
Nothing else I can think of. Just thank you for having me. It's really great to talk to you again.
Absolutely. It's great to talk to you as well, and thank you again for making your return on the Jordan Garber Now podcast. Do you remember Real Aid Media? Well, the creator of that has another solution for you. Check it out. This is an emergency kit and a home safety evaluation for free. This kit has 180 pieces, such as a blanket, light stick, flashlight, cold pack, burn cream, and much, much more. This company is giving them away free to qualified homeowners, as well as a complimentary home safety evaluation for advertising purposes. The link available here is surveymonkey.com/r/204B. That's surveymonkey.com/r/204B. Check it out now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Jordan Garber Now podcast, and I am here with none other than the man himself. I'm going to let him introduce himself, actually, because it's great to have him on the show. A standout in the Alberta scene. He does what I do. He probably does a little better, so allow him to introduce himself.
Okie dokie, folks. It's me, Kyle Shaw, a.k.a. the Canadian Goose, from Real Canadian Wrestling, and I'm happy to be here, Jordan.
Absolutely, and you know what? It is great having you on the program. You've always been a big part of the Alberta wrestling scene a lot these past 2 years. Kind of tell us, to outsiders, if they go to the Alberta scene for the first time, what are they going to expect? Especially with the wrestling they have right now with RCW Friday Night Fights and Saturday Night something.
Fights.
Saturday Night Fights. Friday is Saturday Night Fights. RCW has some big things coming up, so just tell the outsiders, what is it like, checking out an RCW show and checking out the Alberta scene altogether?
Well, in the midst of the pandemic right now, there is some guidelines in place. We have a strong preference if people wear masks. It's mandatory in Calgary and Edmonton to wear masks. However, once you're seated, and if you're eating or something, oh, sorry, my phone just went off. If you're eating or something, then it's cool to take them off. But so we prefer that you wear a mask. There is also a limit of the amount of people. We're only allowed to have 100 fans in the crowd. But we are still putting on some wild and crazy matches. We've just been doing the hardcore tournament recently. So Friday night, the new RCW hardcore champion, the Viking Lord Vince Austin, was crowned in what I heard was a crazy brawl. Last week they had Jason the Terrible in. He was actually in this week too, but last week they were doing all kinds of nutty stuff with light bulb tubes and whatnot, which really isn't my cup of tea. But if you're into violent, crazy action, that's going on right now. We also have heavy metal is fantastic, and him and All American Sexy Steve Rivers have been feuding. Rivers basically just joined up with a whole bunch of other guys, and last night, Rivers and Wild and Tyrone Ironside and all them boys, they ended up getting suspended for putting a wild, crazy beat down on a bunch of guys using flash paper and all kinds of stuff. So it's really like the shows are wild and crazy, and there's a lot of energy and excitement in all of them because like there's nothing else going on, right? Like it's a pandemic, so if you want live entertainment, your options in Edmonton are pretty much and Calgary are pretty much limited to live professional wrestling, which is always a good time.
Pretty much, and that's what the thing about Alberta does is like they do a really good job at providing wrestling during the pandemic, and not just that, but in a safe manner. So that's what a lot of comparisons go to, and creates the final decision when it comes to buying a ticket. Let's say when the pandemic is over, people are going to remember the strides that companies like RCW made to try to make it economical and fair for everybody. And I think at the end of the day, that's one of the hardest things to do, but RCW has been hitting the nail right on the head there. But let's talk about 2019. You know, you had a really big year there. You worked with the likes of worked against the likes of Big Jess, Youngblood, and Heavy Metal, and some other top talent. You know, I'm just looking back on your file here, and I see New Year's Rampage. You faced NVR. You faced Steven Styles. Had some great matches. Steve Rivers, who's a veteran. Zach Mercury, also known as Coda, and Dwight Davis. So out of all of those, like, where was the chemistry coming in, and when did it start to come into play, and when did you start to just learn more and more at this time?
Well, honestly, like, Heavy Metal is probably the person that's, like, taught me the most out of wrestling. Like, just, like, he's got such a good mind for it and knows how to explain everything and lay everything out in such a way that, you know, it's effective. So I love wrestling with Metal. I love learning from him and whatnot. I'm currently enrolled in his wrestling school because, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you shouldn't just go to wrestling school for 3 months, graduate, be a wrestler, and, you know, not train anymore. You should keep up your training, and that's what I'm doing at Top Talent Wrestling Academy under Heavy Metal. And, you know, MRB is there as well, so that's really good. I've learned a lot from him. I've never had any actual, like, matches with him on shows or anything because he wrestles for PWA. Also, the Viking Lord Vince Austin, I have to give a shout out to him. He's been like a huge, like one of my best opponents and a huge supporter of mine. And then, yeah, like me and Squig have had multiple matches. And, you know, me and Squig are not Benoit and Angle, so from a technical standpoint, they probably weren't fantastic. But I remember we've had a couple that were like really good, like Gaga style stuff. We did the only ever Baconator on a pole match. Was me versus Steven Styles. Yeah, it was fun.
No, it does sound a lot of fun. When it comes down to learning and just, you know, you learned a lot of that from Heavy Metal. But talk about working in front of crowds. You know, what are some places in Alberta, whether that's in Edmonton or Calgary or somewhere else even, but not just those places, but those venues that you really enjoyed working in front of and developing a great relationship with the crowd from?
Well, definitely, like Edmonton and Calgary are my two favorite places to wrestle. Also, Red Deer has a fantastic scene. I've never actually been able to wrestle in Red Deer, though. I've announced many shows there. I've refereed at a few shows there, and I was a mysterious manager one time at a show in Red Deer. I'd love to wrestle in Red Deer because I used to live there and I have, you know, some friends there and stuff. But it just hasn't been in the cards so far. But Red Deer's fantastic. I've worked in Bonnyville, Radway, Onway, Medicine Hat. I've announced in. Yeah, all over Alberta. Like we've done shows everywhere. Ponoka. You know, I could keep naming small towns that nobody in Winnipeg's ever heard of, but.
I remember Bonnyville, actually. Bonnyville is a nice town.
Bonnyville's where I debuted.
Yeah.
I had my first match in Bonnyville in 2018 for Lakeland Pro Wrestling.
So let's talk about that, actually. It's kind of go down to that. You know, there's a lot of people that receive the training and, you know, they're ready to go and they're ready to do it, but there's a lot of people like that drop out of training and, you know, they have their debut and they get killed in there. What was your debut like? You know, you had some pretty good training from Heavy Metal, so did you feel you were ready at the time?
Well, at the time, heavy metal school wasn't set up yet, so I actually was trained by Andrew Hawk.
That's correct. My
Um,
apologies.
oh no, that's okay, bud. Yeah, so I was training under Andrew Hawks. He had a training ring set up in his backyard, and he was training me and a couple other guys. And I think it was like a month in, and then Squig said, "Oh, I'm going to do this show up in Bonnieville, and I got you booked." And I was nowhere near ready, but it was like I've got this opportunity, and I've wanted to be a wrestler for like 20 years, so I'm not gonna just say no. So I had my first match. In all, like for what it was, I thought it was, I mean, it wasn't horrible. It was, you know, but it was definitely not as good as it could have been. You know what I mean? I mean, everybody's first match is pretty rough usually, but yeah, it was okay.
You
It
know,
was fun.
I'm recording this as of remembering my last match I refereed. And I did make a post about this on social media. I got to gain some weight to return to training in the ring for myself. As
Oh,
way,
okay. I didn't know. Do you wrestle as well, or do you just
I'm a referee
train to
too,
ref?
actually. I'm a referee, and I'm actually training to enhance my referee skills and training the ref and training to wrestle as well. So what I'm
That's
trying to
good.
do is I have a whole mainframe podcasting background, and I lost 15 pounds, and I'm already really skinny as it is. So
Hmm.
basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to deliver a solid product, solid podcast, and then when I get back into shape, I'm going to be doing that again. Now, I did the Northern Death Tour, and
Oh, wow, cool.
that was amazing as a referee. That was really cool. So I know I can make those strides, but I don't want to kill myself doing them if I'm not at the right weight. Like, if you want to be, and that goes to anybody listening. Like, if you want to be even not just a wrestler, but a referee, like you got to be in shape for it. That's why I'm pulling
Yeah, it's
myself
tough.
out. It's a
Like
good
I mean, I would
perspective.
never claim to be like a specimen of physical fitness myself, but it is something that I work at. Like the training we do at Top Talent is very vigorous.
Absolutely, I love it.
Yeah, but it's
I
it
wish I could
it's
go.
yeah, it's awesome. It's really good.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I do got to give credit where credit is due to a Top Talent Wrestling Academy now. There's a lot of guys there that love what Jordan Garber's about and love his work, and there's some people that are like, meh, and they have every right to, because those guys are some of the best trainers like you could ever learn from in Canadian wrestling. And it's great how we have a solid program in Manitoba for training now, and now there's a solid program in Alberta. So that just creates more opportunities and more work for hardworking individuals. So if I want to be a ref again and get in there, like, then I'm gonna have to pay those dues and continue to do so. And that's what I'm learning now. But you know what? Like, once again, I never regret being a podcaster. And as much as I love getting in the ring and being a referee, especially for my next question, I'm gonna ask you. I just enjoy being the podcaster. If I had to choose one, I had to choose that. But if when it comes down to one thing there, Mr. Shaw, you've worked with two guys. My last match, what I was trying to get to, is my last match was Mitch Clark versus Sean Martins. And
Oh, okay.
I just kind of wanted to have you share any experiences or stories with those two. Those guys have some big numbers here on our podcast. Lots of listeners overseas listening to that podcast. So kind of tell our listeners that listen to that interview, listening now, kind of some stories you had with them or some things they taught you along the way, man.
Well, honestly, like I know Mitch Clark and Sean Martins. I have wrestled Sean Martins on a couple of occasions. We did a one-on-one match. It was actually the match between me and Sean Martins was the first match in the decade of 2020s in all of Alberta. It was me versus Sean Martins in Calgary.
Wow.
And then the next night we wrestled. It was a tag team match, me and Machete against Sean Martins and Bryce the Slammer Sova. As far as Mitch Clark is concerned, I haven't had a lot of matches with him. I've interacted with him. He's come and he's wrestled a couple of other guys on our shows, but not me. But yeah, he's a solid, like, he's a UFC fighter, man. He's deadly.
No, it was really good. I had some great conversations with him after that match, and he's a really good guy. Like, he's learned from some of the best in the UFC on his wrestling game. He came into UFC with a wrestling background, and now he's in pro wrestling. And he can have some fun now with some of those things he learned in UFC. He can transition that to some of his moves. So I like to do a top 3 here every single show. It's usually a top positive 3 experiences you've had. Whatever category that matches. Sorry, I'm kind of all over the place today. I had like 3 cups of coffee, and I already have to go to work at 2, and I'm just like, I'm already highly caffeinated. So if I sound all over the place, I apologize. But for the top 3 there, Mr. Shaw, we're going to do in-ring chemistry. 3 opponents you had the best in-ring chemistry with, and go.
Oh, 3 opponents I've had the best in-ring chemistry with. Vince Austin is up there for sure. I would also say Heavy Metal, because just every match I've had with him has been good. And I also really love working with Slammer, Bryce the Slammer Sova.
Yeah,
he's
Slammer's
fantastic. Yeah.
He also did the Northern Death Tour, actually.
Yeah, I heard about that. I'm happy for him. I have not had the opportunity to do a Northern Death Tour yet, but I would like to do it one day for sure.
Sorry for my coughing there, audience. I just don't know how to mute myself exactly yet, but I'm learning it. I think the first tip to being a good podcaster would be learning how to mute yourself, but I'll get there. All right, well, Mr. Shaw, you definitely have a great track record, and, you've made a big name for yourself these past few years on the Alberta scene. When it comes down to it, if you could just convince anybody on the street, whether that's somebody listening to the Jordan Garber Now podcast or someone down your block to check out a show, why should someone check out a real Canadian wrestling show as opposed to any other promotion out there?
Well, like I say, it's always exciting. Right now, we are the only regularly running federation in Alberta. I believe PPW in Lethbridge is doing some shows, but I'm not sure if they're open to fans or if they're just doing sort of like a Warehouse Wars type thing. I know MPW has started doing shows again as well, but I'm not trying to bury MPW. I love their shows when I go see them, but they only do 1 show a month, right? So, and RCW, we've got shows on Friday night, Saturday night, and from what I hear, as soon as a few more restrictions will be lifted, we're going to be also adding a night on Thursday. So 3 shows a week, like
lots of opportunity.
Yeah, it's an awesome opportunity for the wrestlers, and it's an awesome opportunity for the fans that want something to do, to get out there weekly and enjoy the show.
It's funny because before we wrap things up, you think during the pandemic people would have more like 10, 20 matches a year, and now it's back to weekly wrestling again, which was like around in the 90s in Winnipeg, and they had a lot of that going on back in the 90s and a lot of indie things, and with RCW bringing that back, wrestlers, they want to be working 4 or 5 matches a week, especially if they're just coming out of training. That's an amazing start. So credit to RCW doing something that is not easy, and credit to you for being a great worker, great wrestler so far in your career, and a great ring announcer, and doing the same thing that I do. I just want to make friends with people that have the same volume and passion, not just for professional wrestling, but for the podcasting product in general.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy it. I love ring announcing. I have heard a lot of people say that I'm really good at it and whatnot, and I always appreciate that. There's a lot of people that think I'm a far better ring announcer than wrestler, but the thing is, while I love ring announcing, I absolutely love wrestling. I would wrestle over ring announcing any night, but it is what it is.
I know what you mean at that point too, because at the end of the day, the best part is working in front of a crowd. And as a referee,
the thing is, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no problem.
The reason I love wrestling over ring announcing, and don't get me wrong, it's important to have a good ring announcer, somebody that's into it and having a good time and knows what they're doing and can hype the crowd. That's all great, but nobody's coming to the show to see the ring announcer,
No,
So that's why I love wrestling. It's purely like I get to be in the spotlight, and I absolutely am thrilled to do that, you know?
Absolutely. Well, where can people follow you on social media? Check out more projects you have coming up, things along those lines.
Well, my most active social media is my personal Facebook page, Kyle Shaw, on Facebook. I friend most people that send me a request, so you can shoot me a friend request on Facebook to Kyle Shaw. I also do have a Canadian Goose page on Facebook, but I don't tend to use it that much. I am the Canadian Goose on Instagram. I'm also at Monday Night Shaw on Twitter. Which brings me to my podcast. I do have a podcast as well. It's called Monday Night Shaw. I've been doing it for 2 years now, pretty much exactly. And it's been a wonderful ride too, just getting to talk to people. Like, as you know, like hearing stories, learning from people. It's a wonderful experience to just shoot the shit with people. Apologies if I'm not allowed to cuss.
No, you can swear. You can do what you gotta do, my man. You can do what you gotta do.
Right on. Yeah, no, so and Monday Night Shaw is available on Podbean, Spotify, all kinds of podcast networks and stuff. The way to find it, though, is you have to search for Backbreaker Media Network, because my podcast is one of a few that are on Backbreaker Media Network. We used to be on Backbreaker Media Network, then it changed over to Wing Column Sports Network through Spencer Love, and then Spencer decided to shut down Wing Column Sports Network, so we went back to Backbreaker Media Network, and I'm now currently dealing with Mike Maloney, and Mike the Ref is what we all call him, and he's currently my Backbreaker Media Network boss who edits all my podcasts and stuff. So yeah, it's definitely check out Monday Night Shaw.
Absolutely.
I recently actually just to you're in Winnipeg, right? So I might as well let everybody know the next episode of Monday Night Shaw, which probably won't drop this Monday. It'll probably be next Monday. Is going to be with the Boston Bruiser Kevin O'Doyle. So it's already in the can and ready to be posted soon.
Well, that's going to be great. I'm going to be sure to check that out. I'm going to be one of the first to do that. And thanks for being on, Miss Kyle Shaw. You've always have a great podcast as well. I have to say that. So thanks very much for your time, and wish you nothing but best and well wishes.
Yeah, no problem. I should just mention, too, that if you are in Winnipeg and you do want to see me or the Canadian Goose, I have just been talking with some of the guys for the I am blanking on the actual name of the federation, but it's the Christian National Wrestling
CNWEA.
Yes. Yeah. So I was supposed to be out there for a show for them last month, but unfortunately I have an injury, so I wasn't able to go all the way and do that show. But I have agreed to be there on October the 30th. So
I have tickets for that.
I look forward to that. Solid.
Do you want to say that on the Jordan Garber Now podcast as well? We're going to have some more CNWEA stars as well. I see that Wavell Star, we talked to him about being on the show, as well as some other names. So be sure to check that out as well. Tickets are $20 in advance, $25 at the door, Friday, October 30th at the Sudanese Center, 129 Dagmar Street. Also, Saturday, September 26th at Club St. B. Classic River City Wrestling. I guess that's associated with CNWEA. That is Rugged Rob Stardom, against Mentalo at Club St. B, Saturday, September 26th. I have tickets to both, but Kyle Shaw, who's on this podcast, will be at the one live Friday, October 30th. Any other shows coming up?
Yep, and I'm very hopeful that I will be good to go by then and can actually wrestle. I was told that if I'm unable to wrestle, I can work as a manager. I'd also, I'd be happy to ring announce as well. So either situation comes, I should be there, and it's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope to see a bunch of new people out in Winnipeg. It'll be cool.
Absolutely. Well, you will certainly see me there, and Kyle Shaw, thank you so much for being on the Jordan Garber Now podcast.
Yep, no problem, buddy. Honk, honk, honk.
Are you that wrestling fan looking for that perfect television package to meet your needs? Well, Real Aid Media has the perfect option for you. With the Wrestling Box promo, you pay for the box for $199.95. After that, you're only paying $29.95 per month with no contracts and no obligations. Real Aid Media also provides marketing services operating in 5 countries. To book an appointment or to get your wrestling package, go to stevenbenzelock.bookify.com. That's Steven Benzelock at bookify.com. Check it out. Real Aid Media, providing great wrestling content for a cheap price. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Jordan Garber Now podcast. I was wanting to get this guy on the show for such a long time. It is none other than the Boston Bruiser himself. You can call him many names. One name that matches, though, is Destruction. And Kevin O'Doyle is the answer to that. Welcome to the program, man. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I can't complain. And you know what? 3 years for you, it just seems like it probably flown by. You know, you've definitely gone on quite the journey here in the Western Canadian scene, that's for sure. And it all began with learning from one of the best trainers here in the province of Manitoba, and that's none other than AJ Sanchez. As a matter of fact, I remember those days when we were setting up the ring together, and the training began at the Indian and Métis Friendship Center. And that's when AJ Sanchez started to take the lead on the local scene in terms of leadership. And as my opinion, I couldn't ask for a better mentor and someone to guide the Winnipeg scene. But what was your exclusive experience with AJ? Why AJ? Why didn't you go somewhere else and train? Why did you go train with AJ? Anybody else you could have trained with?
Well, in terms of someone who knows just pure knowledge about wrestling, in and out of the ring, AJ Sanchez is definitely one of the top guys in Winnipeg. But also, I'd go so far as to say one of the top guys in Canada. He knows how to put a match together. He knows how to build out to accentuate your strengths and hide your weaknesses. So, but I was actually it was recommended to CWE by a coworker that I was working with at the time. So.
You know, from that first day stepping in, you know, not everyone can just go in there and do this. You know, it's really hard. As a matter of fact, 8 out of 10 people that step into between those ropes in training class fail and end up doing other things, whether that's what I'm doing now, whether that's being a referee or anything along the lines of this business. But the training, the journey to become an actual wrestler, be an actual worker, and say you're a worker, it's so hard now. You know, 8 out of 10 people can't do it. So what kind of was your advantage? What was your strategy on just even surviving these classes at the beginning?
Well, my strategy was I wanted to get this done. I wanted to prove that I belong in a wrestling ring. I mean, there's a photo that comes up every once in a while after one of our classes where we were taking forearm shots. Of all the people that I started with, I think there's only one of them, other than me, that is still going. So
when it comes down to that, like with just starting out with that too, you know, you had that training program and you got on such a long way, and then look at the class now. Look what it's evolved to. So for calling yourself a alumni of that class is a big thing. But what was it like, you know, working the early guys in the beginning, like PCW guys like Dragneil, Jack Lydon, AJ Sanchez, working with him in the ring now after training, and then working with guys in CWE like Alex Anthony, Tony Novak, even the Warlord, you know, in the beginning of things for you. What was that whole year of 2017 like? You know, most people step in, they have 3-4 matches, but no, you're wrestling the Warlord. You're wrestling Tyler Colton, who's literally hands down one of the most talented guys here in the city. So wrestling top guys and wrestling big names in your first year, could you ask for anything more? What's one regret kind of at that point that you wish you could have done better?
Well, I could have asked for anything more because it was really going from the pool to swimming with sharks.
Yeah.
Because at the time, I always want to be the best that I can be, and I'm going up against the best that we have. And my biggest regret is my fitness at the time wasn't the greatest. I would also get in my own head as to what I wanted to accomplish for that match that night. So every so often I would get myself lost or get myself confused, but over time that changed. Over time of going out, getting the reps in, getting myself booked on other cards, getting myself booked on other shows, I was able to set my own pace for my matches.
It's amazing too. You're talking about setting up your own pace, like for your matches. We go down, and this is part of why we want to get you on the show here. I'm just looking at our file. 2017, you have all these matches. 2018 now, it gets bigger. 2019 is bigger, and 2020 is where it's at now. It would have been bigger, but we are going through the coronavirus. But still, just every single year, it just seems to get better and better for you. But let's talk about 2018. Doing these tours. Go ahead.
Well, at the end of 2017, I had a show. It was in November, and it was actually at the CWA show where I had a match, and it was all right. It was a match with Tyler Colton, and the match was all right. It could have been better. I knew it could have been better. I openly admitted it could have been better. And one of the things that was suggested to me is I'm not going to get any better if I only wrestle one Saturday every couple of months or every month. So that's when I went and got myself booked on the next more shows for the next tour, which I think was the Jake the Snake tour.
Yes. I remember that, actually. I think I was at the CWA show, and I was in the back, and I actually remember that day where, I think Tyler Colton was explaining to not just you, everybody as well, like, you can't get noticed in this business if you're wrestling on one show a month. And I feel like that's how your resume jumped, is because after like getting that, like you just been booked solid ever since that day 2 years ago. So what were some other guys that kind of pushed you in the right direction besides AJ and Tyler? Who are some other guys that give you that big push to excel?
Adam Knight's one. Jacob Creed's another one. Basically, everyone who I've wrestled with has given me some form of encouragement, or sometimes, I've needed that kick in the butt to go, hey, what were you thinking this night? So.
And 2018 also was a very exciting moment for you too, because that was the Strutting and Cutting tour. And that was a big year for you, because that's when the tours began. Now that's not when you're just wrestling in Winnipeg anymore. You're going out now to more local, out of show town shows like San Adolfo, but now you're going to places like Yorkton and New Markets and Melfort and Medicine Hat and Regina, Kindersley, all these places. Like, so doing that tour, how was that on?
With every tour, I've increased where I was going. It all started with the Jake the Snake one, where I just did a couple in Manitoba. Then I did Gladstone, I think. And then I did Brandon and Winnipeg, and then that was it for the Jake the Snake one. Then for the Ron Simmons tour, I decided to go out to add a couple more dates in Manitoba and went out to Saskatchewan. Then with the Strutting and Cutting tour with Brutus the Beefcake, I went further than that. So, and then with the 10th year anniversary tour with Psychosis, I went further west, but I also went further east as well, because I went as far as Toronto. So every tour, and then with the last one with Hoovy, I went out to BC.
I believe that was Golden, British Columbia. Or was that the one? No. Where was that in BC again?
For Hoovy's tour, it was for Kamloops.
Kamloops, yes, I remember. And you know what? That must be kind of a cool thing. Let's kind of look at this from a business standpoint. You're doing a business and a body standpoint. I only did one big tour once, and that was the Northern tour. But this is different. This is twice as longer than the Northern Death tour, and like you're not getting much of a break here. City, town, hotel, wrestle. City, town, hotel, wrestle. Doing that 30 days in a row. what day does your body start telling you, like, what the fuck is going on? Like, is there any day, like, that tells you that during the tour, or you just keep going to the finish line here? Are there any indications or anything, or are you just like a machine?
For me, I just keep going. I mean, usually on these tours, I have to stop for a couple of days because of my shoot job. And so I'll go like maybe 8 days in a row, come back, work a little bit, and that's when I start to feel it, because then I'm not doing the,
You're not
the
being
pace
busy.
is stopped. And then when I fly back out to rejoin it, I have to get my mind and my body into that, okay, we need to get right back into this. Because everyone else has been going, so.
No, definitely. And, that's the biggest thing, too, in wrestling a lot of people don't talk about is the adjustment between the real life phase of life and the professional wrestling phase of life. And, that's why I recommend a lot of listeners from around the world, too, like that, to try to, if they have a job, try to relate it as much as they can to wrestling. Like, where I'm lucky for myself because I work at a call center. So I can work on my skills. I can work on my promo skills. I can work on how I sound on shows like this because I'm on the phones all day and I'm getting coaching and I'm getting feedback. So I think, too, me, I don't really have that mindset adjustment because I still think of the call center industry as the wrestling industry. But for you, you're going to a completely different job and you have to readjust your focus altogether and do it over and over again. So I can assume that could be hard on the body, too.
It can be, but, you learn to adjust, you learn to adapt.
Let's talk about, like, before we go on to Alberta and Saskatchewan, let's talk about the Winnipeg product here in 2017. Still very notable, still really strong, but, the 3-year increase, the 3 years from 2017 to 2020 has increased dramatically in terms of ratings, in terms of everything, in all categories, social media, television viewing, and live audience numbers. What is your biggest thing about wrestling in 2020? What's your biggest thing you're excited about for the future in this business? Like, let's look at 2017 and Winnipeg wrestling in 2020 now. What do you think's changed and not changed?
In terms of wrestling in Winnipeg between 2017 and 2020?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Anything that really changed or not changed? Because the scene's really hot right now, and it's getting stronger than ever. So is there any little things even that you noticed, the 3-year difference?
It's hotter because more people or the ones who are really committed to becoming better are going out there and getting themselves booked. And are now saying, hey, what can I do to have the next better match?
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to make sure I'm in these good shows? So there's that. There's also more of there's more of a drive within some people too.
The drive is everything too, like drive and motivation. Like, and there's negative drive, and I believe there's positive drive. But when it comes down to positive drive, let's talk about ringside wrestling. You've done some shows down there in Regina at the Eastview Community Center, and that promotion's been making a huge amount of noise here in Western Canada too. PCW too. Let's talk about those two. They're both a little similar. Working for PCW and ringside, how did those both of those opportunities come together for you?
Well, for PCW, I got through there with AJ. I said that, if I want to go out, like I said before, if I want to get better, I got to get myself on other shows and with this one. And I knew some of the guys were working more than one promotion. So AJ helped get me onto the show, onto the card. And then once I was on, I wanted to make sure I stayed on by checking in to see, how they thought my matches were and, what I should improve on, and then making myself available to work for those shows.
Yeah, that was a great experience. I love PCW. I remember I started out doing the media stuff for them, helped them out with some not podcasts, but more like a media perspective. And unfortunately, that was what I wanted with the company. I wanted to be that ring announcer. I wanted to be an announcer. I wanted to help out. But Andrew was nice enough to me and said, hey, you know what? let's just try to be a ref. Let's give this a go. And, it's really motivated me to want to train further and go that extra mile. So that way, when I have that proper training, I get those proper opportunities. And I think that's another thing that's really not talked about either a lot in wrestling is there's a lot of guys in there. No offense to me. But I was talking with Kevin Cannon yesterday. Guys like myself, I'm a podcaster. I shouldn't always be in there refereeing or being a wrestler. On occasion, I guess it's fine. But I feel like doing one thing in the business and adjusting to something completely different is so difficult. So I feel like you guys got to stick to what you know. And I feel like there's a lot of untrained guys that go in the ring and they're having matches. Obviously not specific people, but in general, in all of wrestling. What are your thoughts on, the stupidity of like not going in there trained? You're just going to get hurt.
Well, if you willingly go into the ring untrained and you get hurt, then that's not just on you.
It's on the trainer.
Because it's also on the person you're wrestling. Because, I'm assuming that when I go in there that the person has an idea of what they're doing. Mm-hmm. But part of it isn't just. I think some of it isn't the fact that some people aren't trained. It's that they don't keep up with their training.
Yeah.
So some people will go in, they'll get the basics that they need, but then they never grow from that.
They'll keep having that same match every show for the next 2 years, and then you're not really getting much out of it, pretty much is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you only work one Saturday a month, and you know what, for the people who only want to work the one Saturday a month, that's your choice. You've made that conscious decision. But then years from now, don't complain or say, hey, I never had the opportunity to make it, or I never had the opportunity that this person had. There's plenty of opportunities out there for people to grow. They just have to take it. So, and be willing to make certain sacrifices. I mean, one of the other promotions that you mentioned was Ringside Wrestling out in Regina.
Yes, sir.
Well, if you want to go wrestle for Ringside, you have to put yourself in contact with the promoter and say, hey, I'm willing to drive 6 hours to go and wrestle for your promotion. If you want to, you can easily find some people to go with. But then again, it's like that with any other promotion. I mean, if you are truly interested in becoming the best that you can be, you make those sacrifices. You make the decisions that I'm going to switch a shift to go work here, or I'm going to go do this. And if you're not prepared to do that, then don't complain when you don't do anything.
It's a funny story too, as I remember that. It brings back a funny memories because I started out in HIW as a referee, and I was working the overnight that night, and I had a choice to work the overnight and not get written up and not do the show, or referee my first ever wrestling show and leave the shift. And what did I do? I told my manager, gave her as much notice as possible. Hey man, this is important to me. I got to go out there and I got to do this. And I feel like if more people did that said they loved wrestling and they're passionate about it, we'd see a lot more of a better product. Not in certain places, but just some of them. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I understand you got your bills to pay. I mean, we all have our bills to pay, but ultimately you also have to, make accommodations for yourself as well.
Well, that's just it. If you want it, you're going to have to earn it, pretty much. And wrestling, there's no easy way of getting the goal. There's no easy way of getting that big tryout. There's no easy way for even a podcaster like myself to get a tryout. It all takes work. Not just work, but blood, sweat, and tears and dedication. And while we're on the same page about talking about traveling, you had a real Canadian wrestling British Commonwealth title match against D. Dwight Davis. And you also worked Derek Cross there in the Royal Canadian Legion in Calgary, Alberta. Yep. How was that? Calgary's a great wrestling town, one of the best in the country. So that must have been good for you.
Well, whenever Canadian wrestling is mentioned, one of the main towns that people think of is Calgary. because of the Stampede Wrestling and the Hart family out in Calgary. So for me, going out to Calgary was just one of the major milestones for me.
No, absolutely. Do you have any plans on where you want to wrestle in the future? Let's say the next 2-3 years. Do you have any realistic goals that where you want to? Any towns you want to see yourself work in? Say this about pandemic gets out of the way sooner than later.
Well, one of my goals is I want to try and get to every province.
Okay.
In Canada, because I think that would be quite the accomplishment for me. I've already done most of the West. I've done the West. Now I just got to tackle the East. I'd also like to maybe head down to Mexico, if that's possible, for a week or two.
That'd be amazing. Mexico's a really growing scene, and there's a lot of little promotions in there too. If you to work in Mexico, it doesn't necessarily have to be AAA, CMLL, or promotion as Azteca or whatever the other one's called. I think it's from the 90s, but you don't have to be with a major promotion in Mexico to get that amazing experience and exposure. No, that's for sure. Mexico.
Well, the thing is, it's the working for the other promotions that helps get you noticed by the bigger promotions.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, if you're willing to go, like I said, but I mean, the main thing that you're going to hear from me today is what are you willing to do to get ahead? What are you willing to do to have yourself known in this industry? Now, I mean, if that means that you have to spend another extra day at the gym, if that means that you got to, sit down and work out a budget so that we can accomplish these goals, then so be it.
Exactly. Well, let's talk about in-ring chemistry before we wrap things up, get to the future shows coming up here. RCW has been running some Friday night fights, which has been amazing. We'll talk about that a little bit, but what are some guys that you just had matches with in the past 3 years that you just really had a good chemistry with? You guys could just click together off and on.
I really enjoy working with Adam Knight.
Adam Knight.
I enjoyed working with him and his tag partner Dalton.
Oh yes, Darren the Bomb Dalton. I have to say, Darren Dalton, when it comes to Winnipeg wrestling, I've never had an intimidation of somebody in the form of respect. Now, I commented on this on Mike Reed because he was on the shout out, actually. He's Mike Hammer. He runs a podcast, and Darren Dalton was on it. Great guys. And Dalton, I just told Dalton, like, I was intimidated in him to the fact that it's a respect thing. I just didn't want to say the wrong things in front of him. That's what I was afraid of. I wasn't afraid of him physically. He was going to beat me up or anything. I was afraid that I was going to say something stupid and disappoint him because that guy was a mentor to me. So, like, Dalton must have been amazing, man. That must have been a great experience for you.
It was. Someone else I've worked a lot of was Mentalo.
Amazing guy.
It's just been, I'm working basically everyone who I can work, so.
Exactly. I feel like the more people you work too, like even of different styles, trained, even the odd time not trained, sometimes it helps you get better too if you're working someone that's not trained because you have to guide them. I feel like anybody like yourself works is just one more match to the memory book to add and just one more experience to add to your repertoire because everyone's different. There's similar styles, but there's always sub-styles that are different and there's always one thing you're going to learn from each and every match. And I feel like that's what one of my favorite parts about the business is, if I were to become a wrestler, is that there's going to be bits and pieces added to me every day. I'll be 82 years old, and I'll still learn so much. And that's the best part about this business, is it's like a never-ending university course.
Well, one of the things that I've been doing ever since I started was after each match, I have a journal where I put in who I worked, when I worked, things I liked about the match, things I wish I could change, or things that, could have been better. So that's what I've been using to get myself ahead. That way I know, hey, the last time I had this match, hey, this didn't work. This will.
You got AJ Sanchez and you as an amazing tag team. I do got to bring this one up before we wrap things up. But you and AJ Sanchez have been making so much noise here on the tag team wrestling scene in Manitoba. What are some future goals? Is there any future goals for you guys as a tag team in terms of developing your brand, or are you guys going to continue to just kick ass and keep doing what you're doing?
I think we're going to continue to kick ass, keep doing what we're doing. I mean, we have made some plans that we're are finalizing, and I don't really want to confirm them yet, so just to make sure that
we'll save it for a big surprise.
Yeah, we'll save that one for a big surprise.
Well, definitely. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing that news personally. But yeah, before we wrap things up, Kevin O'Doyle, we wanted to get you on for 3 months now. We finally did it. Do you have any plugs that you want to give to our audience from fans listening to, say, Winnipeg all the way to Kenya, Africa, New Zealand, all around the world? People are listening. You have any plugs you want to give to everybody?
We got the CWE tour coming up for Labor Day weekend. We're going to be at Rookies on, let's get the date. I believe it's September 4th.
Yeah.
If you're in Winnipeg, come down to Rookie Sports Bar on September 4th. And CYCWE is the most traveled wrestling company in Canada.
Yeah, it's absolutely unbelievable. You know, I remember going to the first show in 2009, and I believe it was Collision Course or No Boundaries, one or the other. And the main event was Bryan Danielson versus Mental. And I remember sitting in the first front row of that match. At the time, what did I think? I thought, oh, you know, it's just going to be another wrestling promotion that's a dud. It's just going to be another thing that's going to be over. And now look at where they are, right? You know, that is the best way of proving people wrong more than anything. And now CWE has turned into a Canadian wrestling empire. And I'm sure all of our listeners are going to look forward to seeing you and AJ Sanchez wrestle for that company and elsewhere around the world as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, it just goes to show you, I mean, for when you're talking about how promotions go, Daniel Bryanson, I mean, here's a guy who at one point in time you thought, oh, well, who's this guy? And then look where he ended up.
Right after CWE, too. So it comes to show there's a lot of guys. You can check out the CWE webpage or the Facebook group, too, but there's a list of over 50-plus alumni that went through CWE. And the coolest part is that all these alumni went through guys and helped train guys like you and help you develop into what you are. And I feel like Winnipeg wrestling is the hottest. We have the most names coming up. And hello, why do you think this podcast has had some success with names? CWE has been providing that. And it continues to be a bigger product each day.
Well, look at who's come in through CW in the last few years. I mean, look at it's basically been a who's who of Ring of Honor.
Very comparable.
And Impact. Is you had Killer Cross, he was in there. You had the Kingdom, Silas Young at one point. I mean, so if you want to see top-notch wrestling, Winnipeg has it.
No, it certainly does. I remember being and watching the scene in 2008, 2009, and it definitely has grown into what it is now. And if anything, it makes me be proud to be a part of it. That's for sure. But yeah, people can follow you on social media. Everyone, please do. We're gonna give away an 8x10 autograph photo as well of Kevin O'Doyle. I'm gonna get that signed at the next show with you, my man, so someone from around the world can win an autographed Kevin O'Doyle photo. You know, and you never know where that's gonna be worth in 5 years, right?
Yeah, you never know. I mean, that Elvis lunchbox signed by the King, with a couple million now. So
never say never, my man.
For your listeners, they can always follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Absolutely. Well, none other than the Boston Bruiser himself, Kevin O'Doyle. Thank you so much for being on the program, man.
No problem.
Newest and hottest in the world of pro wrestling. Then check out the amazing action on Powerslam.tv, the biggest indie pro wrestling channel in the world. Get over 6,000 hours of the best events from over 150 of your favorite promotions from 20 different countries around the globe. Brands like Progress Wrestling, Evolve Wrestling, Combat Zone, Defy, PCW Ultra, PWX, Over the Top, Shine, and hundreds of others with fresh content added every day for only $5.99 per month. Get your free trial today at Powerslam.tv.
You heard them. Use promo code PowerSlam now. And Garber Now podcast, and we are here with none other than an American comedian, a well-known American comedian down in the South here in the United States, none other than Corey, the Buttercream Dream. Forrester. Corey,
what's going on? What's going on, Jordan? How are you, buddy? I'm solid, man. Thank you so much for having me on. I think this is the first Canadian podcast I've done. I think.
First ever Canadian podcast. What did you hear about Canada before we even did a podcast? What do you know about us?
Oh, no. I've toured in Canada before, I've done some shows in Canada, and I think it was Larry Miller. He's a comedian that he described Canada. And this is pretty accurate. He said, when you're an American that goes to Canada, it's like you woke up and you think you're in New York, and then you slowly start getting clues that something is just a little off. And that's how Canada feels to me, but in a good way. I love Canada. I think it's great people. It's clean, or at least the places I went to in Canada were clean. And everyone in Canada, I guess it's because of my Southern accent. Like we're in the States here, if you've got a Southern accent, you go to California, people just immediately assume you're a racist. But when I was in Canada, everybody assumed I was like a cowboy or something. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's crazy, and when you performed in Canada, what was the whole difference? What made it weird, though? Like, what were the many factors that kind of created that way?
Some of the many factors that I just and now that I'm looking back on it, it's like, dude, duh. Like, of course this would make a difference. My first time in Canada, nothing really prepared me for it. And I'd been working, like, I'm from the South, so I have a lot of jokes about being from the South, obviously. And in the States, it's, the duality of the South and like the difference between the North and the South, and a liberal person from the South and how weird that is. And in Canada, all that played, except for I didn't realize until the very first night, and I think we were in Toronto, I didn't realize how much U.S. history I had in my jokes, like how many like U.S. history references I had to like generals in the Civil War that like down here, it's like commonplace. Everybody knows. But up there, they're like, yeah, why would we fucking know about this guy? Like we would have like, I don't know who any of y'all's most famous generals are. Why the fuck would I? So it was just those little things that I didn't realize how many like specific American references that I had, and that was pretty much it. That was the one thing that was different. Other than I will tell you this, and this is a compliment: Canadian audiences are so polite. Like we only got heckled once. My buddy Drew got heckled, and he during the middle of his set he goes, he's like, man, I can't believe. He's like, I've been in Canada. All I've heard is how nice y'all are, and then I get heckled, and the person that heckled him goes, I'm sorry. And then the whole place fell apart because like even y'all's hecklers are like, I shouldn't have done that.
And that's crazy. Like, talk about one thing we can share in common with the wrestling business is that you got to perform in front of a live crowd. And when you do stand-up comedy, performing in front of a live crowd is amazing. Now, let's talk about some of your best skits you did. I think it was The Sanctity of Marriage. And then you also did one about the trans bathrooms. When you're performing in front of a live crowd like that and you got a joke and it hits a home run, like, how does that make you feel? Is it like a similar feeling to wrestling?
I mean, I've never wrestled, but I would have to assume I've talked to enough wrestlers to know that like getting a pop in front of a live crowd, no matter what it is that you're doing, is probably the same across the board. And there really is nothing like it. I mean, the only thing I can do, like when you're in the middle of a bit, like that bit that you're talking about, that was my closer on my last album. And it was like a 15-minute long bit. And I knew it frontwards and backwards. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm never botching this. Like that. And when it's going well, when you're in front of a hot crowd and you're in the pocket and you got that bit, it literally feels like you're floating above yourself, watching yourself destroy and enjoying it. You know what I'm saying? Like I've done that joke so many times. And once you get so good at it, you no longer even, you're kind of on autopilot. Like when you're in the middle of telling a joke, if it's a joke you've done a while and you're perfecting it, you're actually like in your head, you're 3 moves ahead. Like your body's here telling the joke. And I don't know if this is how it is in wrestling. Like once, if you and a guy have such good chemistry, you're like, well, I don't really have to worry about this. I know that he's going to land the Hurricane Rana perfectly and I can just flip over him. And you're thinking about your finish and you're crushing. But that's how it is in stand up. Like I'm 3 or 4 moves ahead and I'm sitting there just going like, oh man, they don't even know what they're in for once I hit my finisher. You know what I mean?
It's crazy. Like, how did that begin? Sorry for the volume increase there. I have to realize my microphone was, now we're at a perfect level. But when you did that first skit, did you start with open mic night or did you start through connections or like, how did it all begin for you, this journey?
It was it ended up being, the standard open mic night situation. But for me, the very first time was different just because I'd been wanting to do stand up since I was about 5 years old. That's when I saw it. Like I remember seeing it on TV, like on the, Johnny Carson and then Jay Leno show. And I see, I'd see my dad laugh at this and I was like, well, it seems like if I could do that, I could make dad laugh. I probably wouldn't get in trouble as much, And so I went at 16 years old. Well, first off, at 15 years old, me and my buddy snuck into our comedy club to see our first live stand-up show. And I remember my buddy, like I'd been telling him for years, like I'm gonna do that one day. I'm gonna do that one day. And we go in and we see this pro, like a first live stand-up show, and we leave. And my buddy's like, "Dude, no offense, but there's no way you can do it as good as that guy." And I was like, "No, you're right, but I got to start somewhere." So I started writing this blog on MySpace, which dates me a little bit. This was when I was 16 years old and I'm about to be 33. So I've been doing stand up quite a while, all my life, like half my life, at least, all my adult life. So I started writing this blog on MySpace and I guess I got some followers from the area. And one day this dude sent me a message and he's like, "Hey man," he's like, I'm a promoter here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And, I want you to come host this comedy show. And I was like, I've never done stand up. And he's like, "Well, dude, there's blogs that you're writing, like you're writing jokes, like just go tell those jokes." And I was like, "Man, I'm not ready for that." And he goes, "I'll give you $100 if you open the show." And I was like, "I'll be there." You know what I mean? Like at 16 years old, $100, like that's like telling me now I'm gonna give you $5,000. Like I'm doing whatever gig you want me to do.
That's how much I make as a
so I went. Now. Right. There you go. So so I go and my leg was trembling and one of my buddies drove me up there and it was probably terrible, but like I got bit. I got a good laugh and I was bit by the bug and that was it. And I tell a lot of people like getting paid, usually it takes so long to get paid in stand up and I got paid $100 my first time, but then it took me like probably 5 years to get paid again. You know what I mean? Like after that, I would go just to our local comedy club, open mic night, B night, radio promotion night. I'm doing everything I can. 5 years later, I think maybe I made another $25. And then now at about 16 years in, we're starting to break even,
Well, you actually part of a very famous comedy tour called the Well Read Comedy Tour. You actually team up with 2 other great comedians as well, and you put on some solid shows. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, those are 2 dudes, Trey Crowder and Drew Morgan. We met, I think we've been touring together for almost 5 years, but we met about 9 years ago. And the way that works out is like, I don't know how it is in Canada really, but like, in a lot of places like New York and California, there's a comedy club every other block. You know what I'm saying? If not more, two comedy clubs a block. But where I'm from in the southern part of the States, there's one comedy club every hour and a half or 2 hours. And they worked at the one in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I worked at the one in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so what would happen was you'd work at this one club a lot, and then it's like, all right, I need to go drive the hour and a half and go in front of a different audience and try this out. So they would do that and come to Chattanooga. I would do that and go to Knoxville. And eventually we saw each other. And they were the only 2 dudes. And to them, I was one of the only dudes that they were doing stand up like I was doing stand up. And by that, I mean, we were Southern, but we weren't doing like Larry the Cable Guy, Jeff Foxworthy stuff, which by the way, I need to put I need to say this, no offense to those guys, because those 2 dudes are beasts. Jeff Foxworthy is one of my heroes. But basically what I mean by that is, most people we know who wanted to talk about maybe more progressive stuff or have maybe more liberal ideals, what they would do was they would drop their accent so that I guess they were ashamed of being from the South. And we were just like, no, man, we can be both. Like we can be overtly Southern and we can speak our mind and say that we're a more progressive, open-minded group of people. Why not? And so I saw them doing that and they saw me doing that. And we were like, oh my God. And we just kind of gravitated towards each other. And we're like, we got to stay together forever. You're the only only people like me. And then years and years and years later, after writing and doing online sketches and just trying our hand at everything, just drunk on our porches, praying to God something would work. Finally, Trey started this character called the Liberal Redneck. And one of his first videos got like 25 million views and got him all these followers. And then we were able to start a stand-up tour that we're still on 5 years later.
And they've been selling out like consistently, haven't they?
Yeah, man, like nuts. It's been crazy. Like we moved pretty quickly from stand-up comedy clubs to theaters, and it's just been great, man. Now, I don't know what the future holds after the pandemic, but yeah, it's been a whirlwind, and it's, you know, changed my life forever, and has just given us so many opportunities. And again, like I miss it so bad. I miss being in front of that live crowd so bad.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully this pandemic just dies down eventually, you know. Hopefully things get back to normal soon. But like looking at your resume too, you know, you do have a history of Canada as well on stage, not with just that, but being on the CBC, and you were also on The View as well. What was that?
Yeah,
how did that all
yeah.
come about? That must have been quite the opportunity.
It was quite the opportunity. How that came about was me and the guys 4 years ago, we got a book deal, which really changed my life. Simon & Schuster gave us a book deal. We all three wrote a book together, and then a lady by the name of Whoopi Goldberg read said book. And she was, I remember it was crazy. My wife's grandma called me one day, and she's like, "Hey, I heard that you were going on The View." And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, you're going to be on The View." And I was like, "Grandma Sandy, you know, no offense, but I'm pretty sure that I would have found out that I was going on The View before you would have found out you were going on The View." So what I had asked her, what I figured out in my head is that some other comedian from the South was going on The View, and they just said Southern comedian, blah, blah, blah. And in her mind, she's like, well, if it's a Southern comedian, it must be, you know, Corey. And so I was like, "No, Grandma Sandy, I'm not going on The View." And she's like, "They were talking about, Whoopi Goldberg was talking about you on The View and said that she had to have you on." I was like, "All right." Hang up the phone with her. My next call is from my manager, and she's like, "Hey, did you hear that Whoopi Goldberg was talking about you on The View?" And I was like, "God damn, I got to call Grandma Sandy back." So yeah, Whoopi read our book, and then she had us on, and we got to talk about it. It was my first time on live national television. It was absolutely wild. We sold a bunch of books that day, and you won't believe it, it helped ticket sales as well.
Well, that's awesome. You know, that's what I had in wrestling too. Is I remember, you know, I did an interview, and what I do is how I get my press is I'll just copy, paste, send to all the major sites, and keep working hard all night, and eventually it gets out there, and you get that big result. And for that to be on The View, everything pretty must have changed from there pretty much. So did things like increase dramatically after that, or was it kind of just like a 2-week 15-minute of fame thing, and did it die down, or are you still
No, I mean obviously there was a peak, like, you know, our book peaked right about 2 weeks after that, yes, but like luckily for me, like me and Whoopi were talking about it. First name basis with Whoopi Goldberg. I'm just bullshitting. But basically what it is that I've been doing stand-up for a long time before then. I think that if I had just started out in comedy, like if all of us were very new and we had just gotten this lucky break, I think that we would be done now. You know what I mean? I think it would have been a 15-minute thing. But basically, our hard work met an opportunity, and that's what luck was. And luckily for, like, it just opened up a bunch of doors. And then once we were able to do this, and this, it's like, then we got a sitcom deal after that. And then I'm currently still in a sitcom deal with ABC, and working on a cartoon, and just hosted a barbecue show for the Cooking Channel, and wrote a game show for Game Show Network. So the ball's rolled pretty good. Hadn't been back on The View. That'd be sweet. They could have me back on, but at the same time, I ain't wrote another book since then, so I don't blame them. But no, man, everything's been good. It all changed my life, and I think the important part is, you just have to, like, once something like that happens, you can't just be like, "Cool, this happened, I'm good." You got to work even harder after that than you did to get there, if that makes sense.
No, most certainly. And you, after that, you know, you're on CBC. You said you're doing work for ABC. You're on ABC as well. And you've been in multiple movies as well, or short films, or whatnot. What was the CBC like, and the BBC? Let's cover England and Canada here. What were those projects for?
So those projects, it was for a documentary that I still have not seen, because it was not. I'm glad that you just brought that back up, because it reminded me that I need to, like, get a hold of the people that did that so I could actually see the project. It was for a project called My Trans American Life, I think is what it was. And all I know is I was just straight up interviewed in it because it was about the transgender bathroom law in North Carolina. And that was Trey's video that was so popular, was about that bathroom law. And they just interviewed us, I think, in San Francisco after a show. So that's really like, that one's a little boring. That's pretty much the entire story on that. Like, I didn't actually get to go to, the BBC or whatever. It was just a project for them.
Oh, okay. But you said a joke about that knocked out of the park. Like, what was that all about? Like, how did that whole thing kind of come together, and how did you hit that home run when you delivered that to the crowd?
Oh, that joke, man. So here's the weird thing about that, and the weird thing about jokes in general. So the joke in question is a joke about transgender people in the military, right? So, there was this big hoopla about transgender people in the military. And like, obviously my stance on it was just like, dude, first off, anybody that wants to join the military, you should support them. Like, y'all are the group of people who's constantly support the troops. So I just feel like if anybody's that brave, what do you care what their personal situation is? That's just me, it's just me. So the whole joke was about that and how ridiculous that sounds. And I did an act out of like what it would look like for, one soldier in the foxhole to be worried about the genitalia of another soldier in the foxhole. And it was very timely and very prescient at the time. But the thing is that I'd been doing that joke for like 9 years. And you could say, well, the transgender bathroom thing and the transgender military thing isn't 9 years old. No, it's not. It's that joke originally was about gays in the military, because that was the big hot button before that. And there was this thing called Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which is basically like, look, if you're gay, just don't say shit, and then you can be in the military. But if we find out you're gay, you're gone. Well, the joke was just about that, and how crazy, it would be that you would care that someone was a homosexual when they, like, as long as they can shoot and don't want, will help you not get shot, I think that should be okay. And so what happened was Don't Ask, Don't Tell got repealed. And obviously I was happy about that because I thought it was a bullshit policy. And I had a lot of people that like my buddies in comedy who were degenerate, horrible people who were like, oh man, it sucks that Don't Ask, Don't Tell got repealed because now you can't do that joke anymore. And I was like, well, first off, it's a good thing because I hated that policy, but don't you worry. Something one day will come along even worse. And basically what happened was when the transgender and the military thing came along, I was able to just take that old joke and everywhere it said gay in the military, I just replaced it with transgender in the military. And sadly, bigotry and being a piece of shit is pretty evergreen. So it kept working.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, let's kind of go back to your wrestling character now. More of a character. President Trump posted something ridiculous, and the way you react to it made the whole world laugh. What was the whole buttercream dream about? And you're the European champion, so apparently you say that belt is still around. Tell us more about that.
So the first iteration of the buttercream dream, actually, like how those videos got started, I never really intended on them to be wrestling promos. What happened was something got said about protesters or something, blah, blah, blah. Basically, I saw the president and a bunch of people in power essentially throwing freedom of speech aside, even though freedom, like they love freedom of speech when it's them being able to say whatever they want without consequence. But all of a sudden they don't want to believe that peaceful protests and stuff like that fall under freedom of speech, which they very much do. So I was just furious about the hypocrisy. And I was, as every white man does when they're furious, they go and they want to take a cell phone video and put it on the internet because everyone needs to hear my opinion. So as I'm fired up, I'm walking out the house. I just look over and my buddy had just sent me that European Championship belt. Like I just got it in the mail and I saw it. And for some reason, I just grabbed it and put it over my shoulder as I was walking outside. And I just started filming myself. Because if you look in the first video, I'm not doing a different accent. I'm not doing a character voice. It's just me. And I didn't write, like nothing was written. It was very much just from my heart. But the video got shared a lot. And the reason it got shared a lot is because in the thumbnail of the video, you can see that I've got the European Championship over my belt. And I think everybody was like, wait a minute, hold up. What's going on here? That's shiny. And then afterwards, all my buddies were like, dude, you got to keep doing them. And I was like, oh my God, you know what I should do? I should just do every video as if I'm cutting a promo on whatever political bullshit see that day, and I'll keep the belt over me. And everybody was like, why'd you use the European Championship? And I said, well, the easiest answer to that is it's the only belt I have. But so in kayfabe, it's because I'm the European champion because in 1776, I don't know if y'all know what happened, but we took that belt from them too. That's the whole, the workaround joke. But really, it's the only belt I have. And to me, it just adds an extra layer of confusing. People are already confused when they see a human being ranting and raving with a belt over their shoulder and they don't know them from any promotion. So they're like, what the hell? Then they see that it's the European Championship, but this dude's talking about American stuff, and it just works on so many levels. I just want to confuse people, really, is what it is. And I think it works.
And, when you do comedy about such a big topic like politics, like, you definitely have to be on your game. You definitely have to know what you're talking about. There's many times where I would say political things and look like an idiot. So, like... Me too, by the way. In 45-second chunks, I can do it. But anything longer than that, I'm an idiot. But the thing is, when it comes to, like, even your writing, how did you get all this inspiration from politics? Why not podcast about sports or anything about the state of Georgia? But why politics? What made it want to be about that?
Well, first of all, I've never really wanted it to be. That's a good question, though, because I never really I never considered myself a political comedian until people like told me that I was. I think what it is like, especially when Trump started running for president in 2016, I kind of made like a pretty big shift. And I think the reason is that a lot of people in this country started associating people with my accent with being huge Trump supporters. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of those. But Trump also won pretty much every category of white people, like even the rich ones in New York, the rich ones in California. So it made me upset. And it also made me very defensive in the sense of like, I was like, regardless of whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. That's how life works. Whether you like it or not, people are going to associate your accent with this guy. How can you make sure that that's not always the case? Well, what I do is I wear it on my sleeve and I go out there every day and I go, hey, by the way, not me. And I'm a comedian. So I do that through humor. So I think the big shift for me politically was just being looked at as part of the problem and wanting to ensure people that I'm not. And again, the only way I know how to do that is through humor. And I hope one day, I really, 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 really hope one day that things are calmed down so much that I think to myself, you know what, you can just joke about football. And for the record, just for anybody listening, if you come to I haven't said Donald Trump's name on stage in probably 3 years. I'm not saying I haven't alluded to him. I'm not saying I haven't done political or societal comedy, but like, it's not like when you come see me, it's just Bill Maher ripped straight from the headlines. No offense to Bill Maher, very funny guy. I go to his rap party every year. It's fun. Bill, if you're listening, love you. I'm going to miss it this year because of the pandemic. What you going to do? But point is, I'm still going to go up there and talk about bonfires, getting drunk, hanging out with my buddies, baling hay, all that shit. It's just that like every now and then one of my jokes will have some sort of message or some sort of angle because to me, that's just what makes me different. And in the entertainment world, in any facet, whether it be comedy, wrestling, music, or whatever, everybody wants that thing that sticks out a little bit. You know what I'm saying? We can't all like it just like if you're a blonde girl that's just going to be showing your midriff and you've got a decent singing voice, there's a million of those. What are you going to do? Lady Gaga, she wore a meat dress. Now we all know who the fuck she is. Also, she's a very generationally talented human being, but you get what I'm saying. It's my goddamn gimmick, and that's what I do.
That's awesome stuff, man.
Man.
If you have to ultimately pick between the two, like, writing and doing stand-up is really two different aspects of things. How was the writing time? How long did it create that book? Like, if you have to do, like, a timeline of how long?
Oh, I can tell you exactly how long. 6 weeks, because that's all they gave us.
Oh, my. How many pages was it?
Well, they wanted 280, and we gave them 365.
In that
because,
amount of time, wow.
Yeah. And to me, honestly, as my dad told me, and this is true because I was so stressed out. Like when we wrote the book, we wrote it on the road. We were touring and we were doing all sorts of shit and doing talk shows and on a press junket and everything. And I told my dad, I was like, Dad, I was like, they gave us 6 weeks to write this book. I'm so worried about it. And Dad told me something that still I maintain is true. And I think about it all the time. He said, if they gave you a year, you would have done it in 6 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he's like, you wouldn't have worked on it all year. You would have waited till the last minute and then you'd have done it. And because they only gave us 6 weeks to write this book, I think it took away all the second guessing. It took away, and it forced you, like, I got to sit down and do this. And we were in really good creative headspaces. So yeah, 6 weeks, and it was a doozy.
Definitely. You've been a big major influence in terms of like comedy and political statements and things like that. But when it comes to someone that wants to do stand-up, say for the first time, a guy like myself, at my job at the bottom floor, there's a bar and they have an open mic there every Wednesday night. Say to someone doing their first ever open mic night, what advice do you got for someone like them?
I would say you need to go up with 5 minutes, which means you need to have 15 prepared, because you'll think what you think is 15 minutes will probably be 5. You know what I mean? Because you're going to sprint through it. You have to understand this is a bad thing about comedy. The bad thing about anything in the performing arts, really, except for like music, you can sort of practice in front of the mirror and just practice, but the only way a joke is good is if people laugh in it, which means the only way to tell that is if you tell it. So the only way to get good at comedy is to be really, really bad at comedy in public in front of a lot of people. So you just got to do it, have thick skin, keep writing, watch the greats. Obviously don't steal their shit, but like, there's nothing wrong with, I like his, borrowing the cadence or like understanding the joke rhythm and stuff like that. Like, as Ernest Hemingway said, if you don't have time to read, you don't have time to write. And I would say with comedy, if that's what you're trying to do, you need to watch, study the greats, understand what makes this guy different than this guy who's not as good. And you got to be fearless. It's brutal. I hope so bad that my kids don't want to do it so bad. I hope my kids are the I say two, like I have in my fantasy, I have 2 kids. I hope my kids are the most boring people on earth. I hope they don't want to do anything entertainment, but yeah, man, you just gotta, write every day and edit. And just know that it's probably going to suck, but keep trying.
What was your experience with HBO? I actually forgot about touching that up. You did something with HBO as well. Is that correct?
No, I was featured in a little tiny spot on Bill Maher talking about or whatever. Trey, my partner, he's been a panelist on Bill Maher several times. Actually, is today Friday?
Tomorrow.
No, he's going to be on. Yeah, he's going to be on Bill Maher tomorrow, actually, on the panel. So no, I was just featured in a little tiny thing. I was featured on there just enough to where I can put it in my resume.
Nice.
You know what I'm saying?
Hey, you know what? That's something to have on your resume. When you get a major corporation there under your belt, that definitely adds to your schedule. So what do you got coming up, man? The coronavirus things are definitely a lot tougher, but do you have any podcasts that you do? Wow. Honestly, what an amazing show that was here on the Jordan Garber Now podcast. Now, when I recorded the first 30 minutes of the podcast in the beginning, I was expecting 3 interviews and we came out here with 5. It's been absolutely amazing, and what a return for the show. We started things off with none other than Bobby Brennan, and that was a great interview. And then we went on to our great return of none other than Phil Stamper here on the program. And then the Canadian Goose Kyle Shaw makes his debut. And then Kevin O'Doyle debuts. And then our main event interview was such a huge one. It was none other than Corey Forrester, who's been on HBO, who's been on The View, who's been on ABC. It's been incredible. So it's just been quite a huge run for the show. I think this actually sets a record for the longest podcast I have ever done, resulting in over 3 hours. I cannot believe it. It's just been quite a wild ride. And with this making it the conclusion of my show, the rest of my night, I'm recording this as of 11:49 p.m., 10 minutes until my birthday, so I'm probably going to sit there and I'm going to watch Mike Tyson Mysteries. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to watch maybe some Trailer Park Boys and watch some of The Office and just relax and get some well-needed rest for the long week I have coming up next week. So it's just great that you guys continue to listen and continue to support our podcast. And it's been really fantastic as well, because we've had listeners on all of our platforms like Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Spreaker, coming soon, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Deezer, so much on so many sources. It's been unbelievable. So I do have to announce an update on Animal. He will be coming to the podcast within the next few weeks to come. I am hearing back from his agent soon. And due to the delay, also, there's a mystery guest. I don't even know who it is, who's going to be on the podcast as well. That is a former WWE or standout star. I have no idea who it's going to be, but apparently it's someone equally as big as Animal to come on the Jordan Garber Now podcast. So that's going to be huge coming in developments. And thank you guys so much for your patience. I assure you guys it will certainly be worth the wait. Podcasts are usually going to result about an hour every Friday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. And it's going to be a great hour of wrestling news talk and one guaranteed interview per week. And we do deliver the daily news update. And that is available on Facebook, Instagram at times, and also Twitter at times. But mainly, and our main source of our news update is on YouTube, where you can get the best quality and the best audio from my podcast available on YouTube. And that news update is probably going to be every second day, which I debut as well on the same after the Jordan Garber Now podcast. So be sure to tune into the post show. As we speak, this show is ending at around 7:59, 8 o'clock p.m. So around 8:05, tune into Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram and YouTube and check out the post show and check out some more great action on the Jordan Garber Now podcast in the weeks to come. If you want to stay tuned for the upcoming announcements, go on the Jordan Garber Now podcast Facebook page and check out what our show has to offer, including giveaways as well. I'm going to give away the Miz. It's like a event used game worn shirt or something. I'm going to give that away to one of my followers on Twitter. First 10 people to mention are going to be put in a draw. I'm going to draw a name out of a hat, and I will ship that to them alongside a free Jordan Garber Now trading card or an 8x10 photo. One of those two, your choice. But what a great interview that was with everybody. Once again, it was Bobby Brennan on the show, Phil Stamper on the show, the Canadian Goose Kyle Shaw on the show, the Boston Bruiser himself, Kevin O'Doyle. And our main event interview was Corey Forrester, and it was a jam-packed edition, that's for sure. For myself, Jordan Garber, and the Jordan Garber Now podcast, please check us out every single Friday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. You guys have yourselves a great night, and please, please stay safe out there.